Well, good morning, and a beautiful, sunny, very, very chilly. Old man winter has finally arrived here in greater Cincinnati. Wind chill last night down to about 10. Those are the nights you really have to have a soft spot in your heart, right? For maybe some children, some people, animals certainly out there that don't have a warm place to go because it's cold, man. We welcome you to Dialed In. I'm Tom Brenneman, joined by nice enough to have him over the holidays back at home. Luke Brenneman. Luke, how are you back in Bloomington, Indiana this morning?
Doing well. I think it's probably the same temperature, maybe colder here. So the sun beaming through the window is a little bit deceiving when you step out. It's like
Yep.
13 degrees. But, guys like us, Casey and I, that Casey says we see orange. We wear those orange colored glasses. It could be 85 and sunny, and nothing is good right now in regard to what the heck happened yesterday. So
All
my
right,
next
all
2 days
right,
will
all right.
permanently be ruined. We'll get into that in a second.
All right, Casey, are you okay? I mean, you told us off the air, which for the life of me, I just can't relate. But I admire and respect the fact that you are so all in on your Cincinnati Bengals that you've had a hard time sleeping this season. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's pretty accurate, Tom. Just life right now could not be any worse. I just didn't think we'd be here. I'm at a funeral today.
Well, no, more accurately, are you doing the show, producing the show from outside today?
Certainly feels like that. Certainly feels like that.
I remember those mornings, man. I don't know what's going on up there. Our show is presented by UDF and Encore Technologies. As you know, we come your way twice a week, right here at 9 o'clock on Mondays on Chatterbox, and we post later in the day on the Believe Network. And then on Thursday, we come your way at high noon to get you ready for whatever's going on over the weekend. You can find us on YouTube/Chatterbox Sports page. You can download us anywhere, anytime. Just search Dialed In with Tom Brenneman, and you're dialed in. Well, as a saying goes, boys and girls, stick a fork in them. As in, stick a fork on the playoff talk for the Cincinnati Bengals. In humiliating fashion yesterday, once again, this time the Pittsburgh Steelers, they have the bottom 10 offenses in the National Football League, scored a whopping 44 points while piling up over 500 yards of offense. There won't be 10 games this season, and it might not be 5 this season where a team in the NFL, now college you'll get it, but in the NFL where a team gets 500 yards of offense. And it was still only a 6-point win. The Bengals lost for the 4th time this season when they have scored 33 or more points. 4 times, 33 points, L at the end of it. Washington, twice against the Ravens, and then yesterday against the Steelers. So what's going to be done about it? Who should be held accountable? Zach Taylor said yesterday after game that the players are good enough. Well, if the players are good enough, does that mean the coaching isn't good enough? We'll discuss the game and all these topics. Elsewhere, the Ravens really got knocked around by the Eagles yesterday. The score was closer than the game actually was. I'm not so sure at the end of the day the Eagles aren't right there with the Bills and the Lions for the best team in football. They started the year 2-2. They've ripped off 8 straight wins. That means Pittsburgh has now a 2-game lead in the AFC North over Baltimore with 5 games to go. Cleveland will play tonight in Denver. College football, Ohio State lays another egg against rival Michigan in a humbling 13-10 defeat. Michigan lost 5 games this season and was missing 2 of its best players from a very mediocre team. Ohio State couldn't score touchdowns in the red zone, and then when they asked their field goal kicker to make chip shots, he couldn't do it. And as great as their defense is, and make no mistake about it, it is a great defense. When they needed a stop from that defense, they couldn't get it in the fourth quarter. And then there's all this post-game stuff. You know the story. It happened in a number of rivalry games over the weekend. Visiting team wins, think it's a good idea to plant their flag on the home team's turf. You've got all this testosterone going on, It explodes. The tempers explode. Next thing you know, police are using pepper spray to stop potential violence. It's just ridiculous. With the loss, Penn State goes to the Big Ten championship game against Oregon on Saturday in Indy. Meanwhile, UC couldn't get out of its own way Saturday. Luke, you were there. You went down with your buddies in a loss to TCU. Now, believe it or not, even though they're 5-7, the Bearcats potentially can still go to a bowl game because they have very high team academics. Believe it or not, that's something that can happen. If you win 5 games and you meet a certain criteria, you can still go to a bowl game. But do you care if they go to a bowl game? It's back-to-back losing seasons now for Coach Satterfield. But believe me, he's not going anywhere. And last but not least, I don the green and white of Ohio University. OU will meet the High Nooners, as we call them, the Miami Redhawks, those of the woke name change, in the MAC championship game this weekend in Detroit. All right, gentlemen, the floor of yours. Luke, take it away, your thoughts on the Bengals and what happened. We'll get to what should happen later. What happened?
I mean, it's an unmitigated disaster of a season. Now that it's officially over, guys like me who try and hold on to any last hope, like beating the Steelers, coming off bye and showing up, it's over. And you can tell the way they're talking about it that this was never even a good football team. The thing that people are failing to understand is even if Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase are going to have these career years, the Bengals are still the team getting beat. We're not necessarily beating ourselves. You can say that you're beating yourselves fielding that poor of a defense, but at the end of the day, it's the other team making plays. If you're going to give up 414 yards to a Russell Wilson who his NFL career was in question and in a lot of doubt about a year and a half ago, then so be it. They gave up 13 checkdowns. That's combining to Harris, Warren, Cordero Patterson catching the ball and walking 12 yards without getting touched.
Yep.
My biggest takeaway was just how coming off a bye in a must-win game, in a rivalry game at home, this has really been something that I guess is a stain in the Zach Taylor era when it feels like you need to be playing downhill. You need to be putting your head on the football as a defensive player. And we have our 50-year-old, 40-year-old safeties, linebackers. These guys should be retired watching the game next to a fire pit because they want to grab you with their forearm, run with you for 6 yards, and then push you out of bounds. Nobody wants to play for the Bengals right now. The defense is in complete disarray, and there's plenty of debate, whether it's skill, whether it's coaching, but the fact that they didn't even show up and make not one singular play where you're like, whoa, maybe the Cam Taylor-Britt hit, if we're really going to be specific. But it's just such a weak effort and a weak organization all around, and it is showing their true colors right now, and it's sad. It really is.
Casey, I know you were completely dialed in on every play. What were your impressions coming out of that game? The offense, and look, I'm a guy that always takes the heat for saying this all the time. And I gave the stat a minute ago about they scored 33. The offense didn't score or 33 or more points. They scored 38. The offense scored 31 because they had the pick six. 31 is still a great number, and you should be able to win in the NFL at 31. But having said that, over more than half of their drives in the first half, they go 3 and out to start. They go back-to-back touchdowns. And then their last 2 possessions of the half, they don't score at all. And so, and they've turned the ball over multiple times in all of these games. So while I am in no way, shape, or form blaming the offense, I totally get what Burrow is saying when he says, I have to be perfect and we have to be perfect on offense. He's saying that so he can take the pressure and not let everybody kill the defense, which everybody's going to do. But I think he knows that they are leaving plays on the field. And you say, well, that was a great Steeler defense. They weren't great yesterday. That was not a great Steeler defense yesterday. I don't know if it was because Highsmith was out. I don't know. But that was not a great Steeler defense yesterday. It has been all year long. Casey, your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I understand what Joe's trying to do, and I think we all know what the issue is. We all know it's defense, and we've said that plenty of times. And I think even like a week or two ago, I started getting kind of tired of talking about the defense, so I just threw in topics about the offense because they weren't perfect either, right? I'm starting to flip back to the other side where I'm just going to start blaming defense all day,
Okay.
because that's truly what it is. I mean,
Yeah.
you put 38 points, regardless of how you got those points. You put 38 points up on the board. You should beat any team in
Yeah.
any situation anywhere in the league. And they have now lost 4 of those types of games where they've scored 30 or more points in a game, and they've ended up on the
Yeah.
losing side.
Yeah, 30 or more, I think they're 2-4. Scoring 33 or more, they've lost 4 times. Yes, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, which is an NFL record. And we're not even done with the season yet. There's still opportunities for them to do that again. Joe Burrow also throwing for however many yards he did and 3 touchdowns on the day. I mean, like, we can point at the turnovers. I don't see how any of those are even related to Joe Burrow. Maybe the one where he held on to the ball just a little bit too long, got a strip sack from behind. He's got to make a play somehow. The touchdown earlier to Jamar Chase was exactly the exact same thing that he did there on the strip sack. He doesn't have eyes in the back of his head. The offensive line's got to hold up longer. The tip ball, I mean...
Yeah, it's going to happen.
Ford was getting bullied all day, and when Hayward just throws up his hands, I mean, what do you expect? T. Higgins got to know to swat that ball down. Anyways, I just feel like we have finally kind of gotten the answer from the players and what's actually going on. And I hate picking on one specific guy because I don't feel like it's all on him, but he said it perfectly. Pratt, after the game, you could tell that he's a little emotional, a little frazzled, frustrated. All he could say was, Russell Wilson getting the ball out quick. We're not fast enough. We're not getting there. We're not making plays. And all I can think of at that point is, well, if it's not Lou not putting you in a position to win and it's you guys not being fast enough, we just don't have the players on this team to make a difference. We don't have the players on this team to make plays when it matters. And that was truly the difference between this game. The Steelers and TJ Watt and Cam Hayward made plays, made turnovers when it mattered, and it made a difference in the game. We had a couple plays go our way. Cam Taylor-Britt pick 6, very lucky. Joseph Osai blocking the field goal, pretty lucky. But we didn't make enough plays, and that's the difference in the game. The Bengals on defense have no one, and I mean no one, to build around. Trey Hendrickson, one more year left on that contract, and then he can be gone. And there's no other player, young, middle-aged, old, to build around this defense. And it's just shown its ugly head all season.
Well, look, we're going to have plenty of time to really start breaking this down because, believe it or not, we still have 5 weeks left in this season, Luke. And, I will say, I really respect the opinion very much of guys that are on local radio after the games with the Bengals. And they rotate. They'll have Jim Breach in there sometimes. They'll have Tim McGee in there sometimes, David Fulcher, Mike Martin. And, listening to these guys last night, and they know a lot more about football than I do. And the X's and O's of it. But to a man, they have come in complete support of Lou Anarumo. They are saying that when he had the players, and this is true, because we all agree at the end of the day, the Bengals got to the Super Bowl and the AFC Championship game back-to-back years, not because of the offense. It wasn't the offense that carried those teams. In fact, the offense, I've argued many times, let them down when it mattered most in both of those games. When he has had players, this has been a very, very good, sometimes great Bengals defense. Right now, they don't have players. And Luke, I don't know about you, I think it would be a terrible mistake to fire Lou Anarumo at the end of the season. I don't think this is his fault.
I don't know. This is a really tricky spot. I've thought about this a lot. To be completely honest, I think you have to make a change. I don't know if it's Zach. I don't know if it's Lou. I don't know if it's every single person that's not named Joe or Jamar. But something's got to change. I think from the defensive perspective, the issue that I have with Lou is he's proven himself. Every single coach who's gotten to the NFL has proven themselves in some way, shape, or form. Lou's proven it at the highest level because his defense is the reason that the Bengals made it to the Super Bowl, believe it or not. It wasn't the Joe Burrow offense that took them.
Yep.
It was the AFC Championship defense. The Super Bowl defense was incredible. But the thing that I'm with now that's really confusing to me is the NFL is a league where, as sad as it may be, and people don't want to realize it, these guys' careers, if you're a hard-hitting safety, a hard-hitting linebacker, you're really getting 2 to maybe 5 years, if you're lucky, of great football out of these guys, just because of the physical toll it takes. And I just think that the defense right now does not want to put their body on the line. Casey and I have said it all year. This is a bunch of old guys that have good resumes and good careers, and that's how they got signed. Geno Stone doesn't even want to tackle me if I had the ball in open space. And that's just a matter of fact. If you're going to make tackles for a loss, if you're going to get to the checkdowns before they pick up 12 yards untouched, then you have to be willing to put your head on the football, to dive into somebody's legs. And that is something that this defense has consistently refused to do. So if you want to blame the players, there's absolutely reason for that. But at some point, you have to look to the top of the food chain and say, when there's no effort, I understand you're not playing with very good cards, but at some point in time, the guys still aren't even playing hard for you. So whether that's still another shot at the defense or a shot at Lou, I think we're breaking it up too much, and it really is just an entire team culture thing from top to bottom. I personally hate how much this offensive team is talking about the pressure to score every drive. It feels like we have 2 different football teams, and I would even add in the element of 3. I think the coaches are one team, the offense and Joe and Jamar are another, and the defense is completely out on another sector, and that's for good reason. But nonetheless, that's not winning football. That's not complementary football. That's not team football. And that's what we've seen all season in Cincinnati.
Well, look, I'm not going to throw a blanket statement like that over the entire every player on the defense. I'm not going to do that because I've watched a lot of sports. All of us have watched a lot of sports, and I fully believe that 95% of the players that are out there, and it might be higher than that, are giving you everything they've got. I'm never going to, now there's some plays where you say, man, but I'm not going to say that this team in any form or fashion has quit. I don't think that they've quit. And I will give at least Zach Taylor credit for that. We can get, to what's going to happen in the weeks forward. But boy, oh boy, the one question that's really starting to get asked a lot now nationally and a little bit locally. In fact, I think somebody on the chat even brought it up, but I heard it for the last week or so. Is there a chance that we're looking at Joe Burrow being Dan Marino? And what that means for the younger generation is he piles up incredible stats. Marino was statistically one of the greatest quarterbacks that ever walked the planet, because they were throwing the ball 40 and 50. They were a lot like the Bengals are now. For most of his tenure, they didn't run it very much. They threw it all the time. They scored a lot of points, but they had defenses that were just awful. Just awful. And Marino wound up going to the Hall of Fame, and he should have. And that caveat with him, though, is always, but he never won a Super Bowl. He went to a Super Bowl his rookie year and never went again. And most of the years wasn't even in the playoffs. So, it makes you wonder. Is because Casey, I think, brought it up. And Luke, I know you got to get rolling. So we can talk more about that in a few minutes. Luke, any thoughts before you go off to class? Any thoughts about Ohio State, Michigan, UC, anything else that happened over the weekend before you got to get rolling?
I have about 8 more minutes, but I think when it comes to Ohio State, Michigan, there's certainly a block there with Ryan Day and that football game. And that's not breaking any news on Monday morning to anyone who follows that rivalry seriously. But some comments after the game continue to prove it. He made a comment, I don't know it in verbatim, but something about, that Ohio State versus Michigan is a game where it really matters more to run the ball effectively. Well, I understand you want to be physical and you want to win the line of scrimmage, but Ryan, that just seems like you're really trying to shove it down their throat. And you want to win a hard-nosed
Yeah.
football game, and you want to win that rivalry game. Dude, just win the game. That's what you're paid to do. You could go and run over every single player on their team, and that's going to fire up the crowd, but they don't care unless you win the football game. So that made no sense to me. I tweeted out in the first quarter, it feels like he gets himself and his guys so amped up to win this game, to be physical, to play relentless, to put on a show for the Ohio State crowd and embarrass Michigan, that these guys go out there and they pretty much forget how to play football in the first two quarters. Will Howard looked like he forgot all four quarters. And I do still think that this is a Michigan team the last 3 weeks. Indiana lost by a score. Northwestern put up 50 at home and then beat Ohio State. I think this is a different Michigan team than we've seen all year. It was a nightmare spot for Ohio State in the sense of you're getting the game as 20-point favorites and a crazy number. I mean, that's never to your advantage. But nonetheless, something is wrong with that Ohio State culture. To go 0 for 4 in the last 4 years, this is not a good Michigan team. I mean, the quarterback threw for 50 yards, and he turned the ball over inside the 5-yard line, and Ohio State still found a way to lose, is the way I look at it. Credit Michigan. They ran the ball on the final drive. They executed more in the fourth quarter. But when push comes to shove, that was how Michigan wanted the game to go. They wanted to be gritty. They wanted to be one in the trenches. They wanted the turnover battle to go in their favor. And it ended up going that way the entire game. And the Ohio State staff could not make an adjustment to get their superstars the ball. Michigan was without their superstar wide receiver, Loveland. I promise you, if he played on that game, he's getting 10 targets. I mean, Jeremiah Smith could not be seen. Emeka Egbuka. Seems like he had a better year 2 years ago than the one he's having now with a quarterback who was recently in the Heisman running, like you had mentioned on this show. So the fact that they wanted it to be a hard-nosed running the ball game, I thought that was a big coaching error in the sense if you dominate in every single skill position, you're 20-point favorites, air that thing out and run it up on them. And they played the way exactly that Michigan wanted them to, and they lost.
Yeah, and then there's the stuff. And by the way, I don't know if anybody saw yesterday, the Columbus Dispatch, they tried to get comments from the athletic director at Ohio State after the game. And he said, look, this is not the time. We'll talk about it another time. Well, he was more prepared to talk about it yesterday. And I found his comments so interesting. He says, look, I got this job. I've been on the job for 7 months. He took over for the legendary Gene Smith. And, he did not hire Ryan Day. But he said, what do you think? He said, let's take a look at this program for a second. He said, we all know about the issues with the Michigan game. He said, Ryan Day is 66-9 is his record. From a winning percentage standpoint of coaches that have not won a national championship, he is 100 points higher than the next best guy. He said, our donors are higher than ever. Our enthusiasm is higher than ever. He said, our academics, Ohio State and Harvard, were the only two football schools in the country. Ohio State and Harvard. These are the comments by Ross Pure. He said, to score a perfect score on whatever set of analytics they use with their football team. He said, we have a problem with the Michigan game. He said, but we're getting ready to play in the college football playoff for the 5th time in Ryan Day's 6 seasons. He said, for anyone who thinks that our program has a problem, we don't. And so does that mean for sure that if they were to lose in the opening round of the college football playoff that he wouldn't fire Ryan Day? Of course it doesn't mean that. But that was pretty strong words of support for Ryan Day, because a lot of Ohio State people, including a lot of former players, I mean, Matt Wilhelm came All-American Super Bowl champion in the NFL, came right out yesterday and said, look, if they don't make it all the way to the championship game, he said, for me, he's gone. I just can't imagine. You better make damn sure you've got somebody good before you make a change like that. You better really make sure. It's one thing to scream and yell, Luke, about making a coaching change, but you better know who's taking over before you make that change.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally with you on that one. People who want to call for Ryan Day's job and question his coaching career, there's absolutely something there with Michigan that he just can't comprehend. But do you guys really think that with the standard at Ohio State now, and I think the 12-team playoff is something that really changes the dynamic of this. I would make the argument that in a 12-team playoff era, Ryan Day is quite literally never missing the playoff. He's proven that if every single year was a 12-team playoff, they're probably going to make it. Not that that's necessarily a fair way to look at everything, but the Michigan game is something that matters enough just from a rivalry perspective that you have to win the game. It doesn't matter if you're still making a playoff. So put that aside. I still think that he's the best recruiter in the country. That he's generating so much money, whether that's entirely credit to him or not. He definitely has a part in getting all these collectives and donors to field the rosters he wants. I mean, the fact that he was able to nab Judkins, I know it was money, but Ole Miss had everything going for them, and we know that's a fun place to be and play, and Lane Kiffin's there, and he goes and just grabs the best running back in the country. This guy is really good at his job. He's almost like a politician to the point where he has to be perfect in every way possible as the face of Ohio State football. I don't know if there's, a better resume head coach out there right now that's not Nick Saban when it comes to just how consistently he does everything right. And the one thing he's done wrong is not be able to win the big one against whether it's Michigan or in the college football playoff in the last couple of years. So he still absolutely has a chance to prove himself this year. I don't think it's national championship or bust. And I'm totally with you. I'll leave it at this. If Ohio State wants to go fire Ryan Day, good luck finding someone in year one who can recruit the way he does with the market and everything going on in college football because he has a great grasp on that. Good luck finding a guy that is going to go have his team consistently win 10 games every single year without a hiccup in the road against a conference opponent because they're really only playing poor football in the regular season against Michigan. So once he can get over that in just 1 year, I think Ryan Day is at Ohio State for the long run. I really do. If you lose to Michigan next year, then so be it. But for now, I don't think his job is in question, or I don't think it should be.
All right, I know you got to get off and run into class. Have a good rest of your day today, big boy. Big boy.
Thanks. See you guys.
All right. To follow up on that a little bit, and look, do I think there are people that can win at Ohio State, not named Ryan Day? Well, of course. I mean, you can say, well, look at Urban Meyer. Well, Urban Meyer is one of the top 3 college coaches in the history of the game. That you take him kind of out of the mix. But they brought in a guy from Youngstown State, you may remember years ago, in Jim Tressel. Nobody had ever heard of him. And he won a national championship there. A lot of people, they talk about, John Cooper, for example, comparing him to Ryan Day. There is no comparison between Ryan Day and John Cooper. Ryan Day has lost 9 games in his career. 4 of them are to Michigan. He has only lost 1 other conference game in 6 years. 1. That was against Penn State. 1 time. And some of all the SEC people that are here in the chat are like, oh, he goes 7-5 in the SEC. Give me a break. Give me a break. Alabama and Georgia have kicked everybody's tail in that conference forever. And now this year, they're not. Give me a break. Everybody talking about Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt was a nice story. Okay, and they played good against those Alabama, Georgia, that kind of thing this year. Give me a break. Ole Miss lost to Kentucky. Kentucky lost by 40 over the weekend to Louisville. All right? I don't want to hear it. Give me a break. I'm not saying that the Big Ten is better than the SEC. I'm not saying that at all. But Saban did the same thing to the SEC that Ryan Day has done to the Big Ten. So don't tell me that you can't do it in the SEC because they're too tough down there. Give me a break. Give me a break. Tennessee lost this year to Arkansas. Arkansas lost to Oklahoma State, who is one of the worst teams this year, one of the worst teams that Mike Gundy's ever had, and the worst team in the Big 12. So, hold on. Georgia played Georgia Tech in one of the great games in the history of college football. And Georgia Tech dominated Georgia. So don't, again, please don't tell me about the SEC. The college football playoff rankings are going to come out tomorrow night. And Ohio State has already slipped to number 7 in one poll, number 8 in another. That would mean that the Buckeyes would host a playoff game. All of this stuff gets put to rest officially this Sunday. So we'll be back here on Thursday, and you've got all the championship games this weekend. A lot of the drama has been taken out of that since Texas beat Georgia. Georgia's going to go to the playoff and should, even if they lose to Texas. And so, you really don't have much drama anywhere else. The only drama that conceivably could happen would be Boise State, because they are playing against a very good UNLV team in the Mountain West Championship game. Should Boise State lose that game, and make no mistake, they could lose that game. They almost lost to Wyoming, or at least they were in a tight game for a while there. Then it would really shake things up. But, Indiana's going to get in. Penn State's playing in the championship game. Then there's UC. Casey, there's no way that they're firing Scott Satterfield because the buyout is too expensive. Right. But, man, you look at we were just talking a minute ago about all the support that Ohio State is getting. And I'm not comparing Ohio State to UC. But in the last number of years, when Fickle started really building that thing up, after the disaster that was Tommy Tuberville, and they get all, it's hard to believe 3 years ago, we're talking about UC being in the college football playoff that had 4 teams. It was 3 years ago. They were in the college football playoff. Now they can't have a winning season. I just wonder what the support's going to be like, because you take away one of the 3 or 4 major donors, and we know who they are. You take away one or 3 of those guys, 4 of those guys, that's a whole different ballgame. I'm a little concerned about what's going on at Clifton. Maybe nobody cares. I don't know. What do you think, Casey? You think anybody cares?
I mean, I'm sure the locals here all really care about the Bearcat program. I think it's a shame what's happened to the team and how quickly things just turned around. We were sitting here in early October thinking that this team was going to make it into a bowl game and that it was almost essentially a lock that they might even make it to the championship, that there was a chance. Things just completely fell apart. I don't know how to explain it other than the leadership just failing to get this team over the hump. That's simply all that it really is the leadership just faltered, and they weren't able to squeak out a win. I mean, they only had, besides TCU, where they lost by 7 points, they only had one other game that was even close to that, and that was West Virginia, and I don't even think, if I remember correctly, that they scored a garbage time touchdown in that game, which they did. So, I mean, it just, I feel like the team is in a really bad spot. Sorsby, even if you think that you want to keep him, he didn't play all that great down the stretch here. Like, there's just not a lot of hope, right? They're going to have to do a lot of recruiting, and I just don't see how a recruit would want to come to UC after the season that they just had. I mean, they just completely fell apart. It's just not good. It's not a good look for UC right now.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I've noticed this year, and I've talked a little bit about this, and I'll get into this at a later date in the show and really gather my thoughts together so that I'm able to explain it without just shooting from the hip a little bit here. But, college football really is getting to a point where and look, you'll always have the outlier. Let me preface everything by saying that. Indiana this year is the outlier. They're the outlier, and you'll see it sometimes in baseball. We talk about the small market teams. And that's what it's becoming in college football. Although, in fairness, in that regard, many of you know, some may not, there will be revenue sharing this year in college football. Starting in July, every team will have $25 million to spend on their roster, however they so choose. $25 million across the board, so everybody starts even in that regard. After that is where there still will be NIL in existence. There won't be some salary cap like we see in football or the NBA or hockey. So your NIL can still raise millions and millions of dollars at the Ohio States and the Michigans and Notre Dames and Oregons and all that kind of thing of the world, Alabamas, which would enable you to spend a lot more money on your team. But that is going to happen this year. So you're going to get some kids who maybe, do I want to go play at Notre Dame and it's me and 3 other great running backs to win the starting job, or I could go to UC, I'm going to get paid, and I got a good chance to be the starter in a year from now. Kids make those decisions all the time. But now they're making those decisions based on the chance that they might make a little money. The coaches that I've talked to, the real problem or issue they're having is, if you've got a kid who's been, let's say, a 2-year starter at left guard for you, and look, you put a premium on positions, right? The most important positions are quarterback, left tackle, a shutdown corner, and an edge rusher, in no particular order. Quarterback one, you can start moving around. Yeah, big-time wide receivers in that mix somewhere. Running backs, depending on the school, how much you run it. Right? Michigan, they value the running back. Somewhere else, maybe they don't. But, if you've got a kid that's a 2-year starter at left guard or center, and he's been a really good player, say an all-conference player, maybe not an all-American player, are you going to pay a running back coming out of high school who's never played a down for your school? Are you going to pay him more money than that kid who's making a 2-year starter at left guard? I mean, it's going to be really fascinating to watch this whole thing, because the one common term I hear all the time in the ACC, including from Dabo, who's at the high end of the food chain, and then schools like Virginia or Wake Forest, who are at the low end of that food chain. It's the wild, wild west out there. And there are a few things they're putting in place that are trying to change that, but they haven't put enough in place. And there's this whole, hamster on a wheel thing going on in college sports, with just when you tackle one problem or potential problem, here comes the next one, and then you'll have this race where everybody's figuring out how to get ahead before that next one gets addressed. And the football people don't put any value in the NCAA. They want to split off and form their own, basically, company to run the football. So this whole thing is really a mess, and where it all ends, I don't know, and people a lot smarter than me don't know. Casey, before we get out of here today, and we'll have more time to talk about this on Thursday, are you going to be rolling from a rooting interest standpoint? Are you going to be rooting with the real men and women from Ohio University? Or are you going to roll with the high nooners from Miami of Ohio in the MAC championship game this weekend in the Motor City?
That's a good question, Tom. Miami has treated Chatterbox very well over the last couple of years here. And I really like the coach there. I'm forgetting his name off the top of my head, but he's been on our program.
Chuck Martin, good man.
Chuck Martin,
good man.
That's right. Chuck Martin. I really like Chuck. Miami was supposed to be a lot better than they ended up being this year. I know they still went 8-4. It's still pretty good, but I think we expected a little bit more from them. I like Miami a lot. I will probably be rooting for Miami just because of how they've treated Chatterbox here over the last couple of years.
Oh, my God.
Nothing against Ohio, nothing against your Bobcats. I rooted for the Bobcats last year. Curtis Rourke, loved him. I just feel like I got to root for Miami this time. I got to root for them to win.
I understand where you're coming from, and I will be the first to admit that I am a huge Chuck Martin fan. He's been great to this program. He's been great to me. There's a chance because the Mid-American Conference team goes to the bowl game that I'm calling out there this year. I got to tell you about this on Thursday, by the way, Casey. I haven't told you this, but as a little teaser, for one half of the Arizona Bowl game, I am going to be calling the game with Snoop Dogg.
Oh, how about that?
Snoop Dogg. Snoop Dogg. He is the sponsor of the game that I'm doing. The Gin and Juice Bowl at the Arizona Bowl. So I'm going to be hanging with Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, and Martha Stewart. Martha Stewart. They're all going to be there. And they're going to be in our booth with the CW network. So that's big time. And yes, Blackmore, I'm dropping names. But I am there's a chance that we'll get either OU or Miami in that game. Ohio University won that game last year, that bowl game. I never slandered Martha for being on SI Everett. I never did that. She was a scapegoat for the whole thing. Give me a break. All right. So let's wrap this thing up. It's everybody. We've had hundreds, if not thousands, in the chat today, and we thank everybody for joining the program. I know you've got Kenner in the booties coming up on Off the Bench. Why is Kenner before we go? They will turn Tom into a rapper, says Matt Bailey.
What's your favorite Snoop
I'm not
Dogg
so sure
song?
about that. What's that?
What's your favorite Snoop Dogg song?
I can't tell you right now. I don't want to give away all my material. I'm going to lay it on him when he comes up to the booth, because I'm sure he'll be wondering that same thing. Why is everybody on Kenner today before we're even on the air?
Chat, why don't you answer him? Why are you all on his ass? Get off his ass. Kenner was, I don't know. Kenner's been kind of right on a couple things. I know there's some other things that he's not been right on, but man, chat is just all over him.
Well, Casey, is this a case where everybody wants him to be a homer and he's not? Who wants that? Who wants that in a show that goes for 2 hours? For everybody to tell you what you want to hear all the time.
I don't know.
Okay. All right. Casey, thank you so much, my friend. Hope you're able to get a good night's sleep tonight.
I'll try, but it'll be tough, Tom.
Well, the Bengals don't play again until Monday night, and that will be down in Big D, Dallas, Texas. I'm on my way there this weekend to start basketball. Go right from football right into college basketball, Atlantic Coast Conference basketball on the CW network starting this Saturday afternoon. Okay, Casey, have a great rest of your day. Luke Brenneman, thank you. Thank all of you for joining us in the chat. Off the Bench is coming up shortly. That's coming up in about 12 minutes right here on Chatterbox Sports. Have a good day.
The Browns, they're putrid. They're the worst team in the NFL.
The season, the 2024 season is over.
Lamar Jackson can't win the playoffs. He'll win a third MVP, though, so that's great.
Drew Sample is the most important piece of the Bengals offense next year.
Go Joe Burrow. He deserves to be MVP. I wish he was the Browns quarterback. Kind of mean that.
If you're looking for the most reactionary, silly, and unserious show on the internet, then you're home. Live from Hamilton, Ohio, it's Off the Bench by Chatterbox Sports on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, everybody, welcome in Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, and Jacob Tissa with you here on this Monday. It's December. It's supposed to be the month of like jolliness and happiness and all that stuff, and just another depressing Monday. Hey, guys, I have a prediction. Today's show is going to sound like this. Joe Burrow did a lot of great things. The defense let him down. Joe Mixon, man, he did great. Ran for 100 yards and a touchdown. What would happen if they got him back? I think that checks everything off, right? We good? I think that's good for the show.
Yeah, I think that touches it all. But it was about as bad of a weekend as one could have if you're a sports fan from around this area, I would say. Doesn't get much worse.
Yeah, I called it purgatory. You called it hell. It's
I don't
closer to hell.
I think it's hell. I mean, I was ready to have a tweet yesterday. Cincinnati football, Xavier basketball, the Bengals, Ohio State. I was ready to list them all. Now Xavier did save themselves last night, but man, it was just a bad weekend all around for Cincinnati sports.
Yeah, it was
terrible.
horrible.
Well,
And
Cincinnati sports.
And
The Browns are trying to go for the Ohio trifecta tonight if they lose on Monday Night Football. But that's coming up. But again, I hope everyone coming off the Thanksgiving Day break had a great weekend. I know from a sports perspective, and that's what this is all about. Probably didn't have that great of a weekend from a sports perspective. But as far as family, friends, holidays, all that stuff, I hope everyone did have a nice little break. Casey, good morning. How are you, sir? I know you're an hour into your day already.
Yeah, I don't have the energy to do the bit that I did to start Tom's show, which was super depressing. It's just not good. It's not been a great weekend. Bengals stink, and football. It's been tough for me this year. It's been real tough. So
there's always next year, right?
Yeah, 2024 season is over.
That's the thing about the Bengals is there's really always next year.
Yeah.
And you know that nothing's going to change.
So with that, and again, Bengals lose to the Steelers yesterday. And look, it's actually, we've done the same Monday show following a Bengals loss all season. It's literally the same damn game. It's the same game. Now, Jake, you were there. Yeah. You're usually at Chatterbox Bengals, sitting in the studio doing the show, just being depressed and just watching it all unfold there. Look, I remember back, what week did they play Washington? Was it week 3? Yeah, week 3. Yeah. And I said, look, every game is going to be exciting. You're going to be in every single game. It's going to be a fun up and down game every time. But I thought that the Bengals would come out with more than they did not come out with. Like, I just thought that they would be in every game, high-scoring games, fun games to watch. That's why I'm surprised they took them off Thursday Night Football here in a week. Like, the games are exciting and fun to watch. It's better than a 13-10 battle or something along those lines. But it is wild at this point of the season. It is the same movie over and over and over. You know the ending. Somehow you still think the ending is going to be different, and it's the same result every time. I've never seen anything like this. I know there's some stats out there. I'm going to let you guys will probably cover it with how many points they've scored and the losses that come with it. It is insane how we talk about how some coaches get fired because of the inconsistencies with their team. This team's not inconsistent. They're very consistent. They are consistently explosive offensively and consistently embarrassingly bad defensively. We know what to expect for every Bengals game moving forward. They're going to beat the bad teams. They're going to be in high-scoring fun battles with the good teams, and they're going to fail against those good teams because of the defense. I've never seen anything like this where it has been consistently predictable because of the deficiencies that just continue to plague this Bengals team. That game was the most predictable thing ever yesterday, and Jake, you were at the game watching it. It was in person, painful result yesterday in the loss against the Steelers.
Yeah, miserable, because you knew exactly what was going to happen every single time. You knew Joe Burrow was going to get the ball, and he was going to give you a chance to put some points on the board, and then the defense was going to let them score almost instantaneously. And everyone in the stadium knew that they were able to throw it to their running back, except for the Bengals defenders and Lou Anarumo. They didn't get the message on that. Bengals losses this season, 2 with 38-plus points, the most by any team ever. 3 with 34-plus points, the most by any team ever. 4 with 33-plus points, the most by any team ever. And 6 with 25-plus points. That's the most by any team ever. Every single game, it's the same story with the Bengals. And I texted Elliot yesterday during the game, and I said, why do we expect anything different? When Rico punts or McPherson kicks the ball off, why do we even watch the drive?
No.
You know they're going to get points. This Steelers offense is terrible. Middle of the league at best. They scored more points than they've scored since, I think, 2019. Russell Wilson looked like Seattle Super Bowl Russell Wilson, 400 yards. It's unbelievable how bad this defense is and how little it's improved. It's honestly regressed since the beginning of the season, and I didn't know that was possible. It's crazy how bad this defense is and how it happens every single week the same exact way. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, they're historic losses. Every single loss, you know it's going to happen, but at the same time, nobody's ever seen it before. It's a tough place to be, I would say. Joe Burrow, in NFL history, 6 quarterbacks have averaged 275 passing yards a game and had 30 touchdowns, 5 or fewer interceptions through the first 12 games of the season. Joe Burrow is the only one of them to have a losing record. 4 of the 5 in NFL history that have accomplished that feat have won the MVP. Joe Burrow is 4-8, and he's having one of the best seasons a quarterback can possibly have. It's a tough place to be as an organization. I went on a rant yesterday, and I'm sure I'll go on a rant today. I was watching with my family, and I was very upset. I'm okay if you just quit. If the offense quits and the defense quits, let's all just quit so I can turn the game off at half. Let's all just quit. There's no point of Joe Burrow standing back in the pocket. I don't care what he gets paid, $55 million. I don't need to see Joe Burrow get hurt in a 4-8 season. I'm uninterested in Joe Burrow getting hurt in a 4-8 season. Bench him. Bench him. They're not going to bench him. They should be benching him. It should be a unanimous benching. They won't, but it should be. Because there's no reason of injuring this guy. He's going to get injured. And if he gets injured during this season, I don't know what the hell the plan is then. Because then you really have nothing. They're going to have to restart so hard. What is the defense? There is none. There's zero defense. You going to pay Trey Hendrickson? I'd argue paying Trey Hendrickson's a waste of all of our time. He leads the league in sacks. They're still dead last in sacks.
Yeah.
What's that accomplishing? What have we accomplished? We've accomplished nothing. The trade deadline acquisition was a terrible running back. They looked at the defense and said, nah, we're good here. We're good. That's where the Bengals are. And I tweeted it yesterday, but you can tell me how the Bengals organization, they've come so far. Oh, look at the Ring of Honor. They brought the Ring of Honor. They do the Bengals Fan of the Week. Look at them. Nah. I mean, it's the same franchise that they've always been. They're unwilling to be a Super Bowl contending, championship winning franchise. They're not that team. You're not that guy, pal. You're not. You can't rationally watch the Bengals week after week, look at the defense consistently, as Kinner said earlier, consistently be the worst defense, not in the history of football, not in the history of organized sports. It's the worst defense. It's the worst group of men that have ever come together to accomplish a single goal. Nobody has failed as consistently and as true as the Bengals defensive players. Every single week, it is worse than the next. I saw somebody tweeting at me yesterday. Oh, it's this, it's the strength of schedule. They're playing playoff teams. That's great. You don't win anything. The Steelers have won games in this division without scoring touchdowns. The Ravens lose to the Browns. Everyone else is able to figure this out, at least in some capacity. They have not had one single game. They've played 12 games. Not one single game have the Bengals offense, special teams, and defense had a complete game. None of them. Zero. Special teams has been terrible all season long. When the offense is bad, then the defense is good. When the defense is bad, then the offense is good. It's been a disaster. It's been a train wreck. And to be quite honest, it's going to be a hard factory reset on this organization going forward. We'll see. Joe Burrow was asked post-game, what's going on? What are you going to do next year? Are you going to still playing? Yada, yada, yada. And he's like, yeah, we're going to keep playing because the tape matters. Jacob sent this in our chat yesterday. We just got to show something for the tape because other GMs and scouts look at it. We got to keep showing up. We might need it down the line. That's where the Bengals are. And it's tough. If you want to be a jolly Bengals fan and saying, look, everything's going to be okay, you can have that opinion. It's what I deal with being a Reds fan as well. There's still very positive Reds fans. It's going to be okay. It's different now. It's not different now, and it never will be. So
this, I remember when COVID hit and there was all these like mass layoffs, right? And I know our company, we laid off a lot of people. And the people that were left, we had to absorb a lot of responsibilities from everybody else. But then they told us, hey, you absorb these responsibilities, do these jobs well just in the meantime, and then when things get normal, we'll bring back a lot of people and it'll take some off your plate, yada, yada. What ended up happening is a lot of people absorbed more responsibility and then did those jobs really, really well. And they did them well to the point to where the company said, you know what? We could give you more help. We could take some off your plate. We could put you in position to where you can go back to just doing what you do by yourself really, really well. But because you show that you can overcome being thrown a lot of extra responsibility and have to do a lot more work, our company made it. We did just fine with you having to take on more responsibility. And hey, why should we pay to have a full-time person come back and take that responsibility off your plate when you've proven you can overcome it and do it just fine? Sometimes when you prove that you can do something at a high level, it bails your company out, and then your company thinks, hey, we don't have to do right by you. We don't have to actually give you help. And that's what that Super Bowl year kind of reminded me of a little bit for Joe Burrow and the Bengals, where it actually worked against them. I know that sounds silly, and I'm here to tell you the positive spin I could put on this season. You may not feel it now, but it's actually a good thing that you were losing all of these games, putting up all the points that you are. Because that's the only thing that's going to get the front office's attention. Because I'm here to tell you, Joe Burrow, winning games in these high-scoring shootouts bails out that front office. It does. It bails out that front office who did nothing to truly improve this defense. Yes, you bring in Sheldon Rankins, but Sheldon Rankins, a run stopper, and you were hoping to help add some strength to that D-line. DJ Reader was that. You just replaced DJ Reader with DJ Reader. You didn't truly improve up front defensively. Like a lot of the moves you made, I get the move. You go get the safety from Baltimore. It was a solid get, but that wasn't especially with all the cap space you had, it wasn't as if that was just all of a sudden defense defining of a move. There needed to be more moves made. I believe that at times the Bengals have been successful despite all their deficiencies, and that's worked against them because we have Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow, he'll bail us out. You know what I mean? Like I said earlier, my company, everyone absorbed all these responsibilities, and we bailed out the company because we've proven that, hey, we can succeed even without X, Y, and Z. And that's kind of the Bengals mentality. We got to a Super Bowl with our quarterback being sacked 70 times. All right, we got to a Super Bowl with an average defense. It's not like we need to have we don't need to invest in our defense the way the Browns did or the Steelers do or the Ravens do or the other top teams in football. Because we have Joe Burrow, we'll be just fine. I truly believe at the end of the day, a non-hater take here, losing these games is a good thing because it's the only thing that's going to get your front office's attention. Because Joe Burrow bailing out the front office and winning games with how bad the defense is, there would be no motivation for that front office to say, man, we have to get better defensively. We have to improve our secondary. We have to improve our pass rush. We have to do this because that's what happened last year. You guys won 9 games. And a lot of these problems defensively that exist now existed then. But everything got chalked up to, well, Joe Burrow's out. That's why we missed the playoffs. We still won 9 games. Imagine we won 9 games and the majority of the games down the stretch without Joe Burrow. We get Joe Burrow back, we'll be fine. The best thing that could happen to you guys right now, it may not feel like it, is the continued losing because that's the only thing that's going to get your front office's attention. Because like I said, you win games despite the bad defense, the front office can say, we don't really need to add a whole lot. We're fine. We're winning. We have Joe Burrow. We're fine. I do think at times the success of the Bengals over the years with all the deficiencies has worked against you because it really gave the front office no urgency to get better, which is just wild and insane. This might be what it is to push them over the edge to get that front office to do something because this is unacceptable. Those numbers you gave out, Jake, about and I wrote those down too. I figured one of you guys would have that. 6 losses, scoring 25 or more, the most in NFL history. You scored 38 or more and you're 0-2 this year. It's the most ever. The 34 or more, 3 losses, 4 losses, scoring 33 or more. What the hell? That's historically and embarrassingly bad. And you're right. What else can that offense do? What else can Joe Burrow do? They're doing their job. Everyone's doing their job except that defense. And we could blame Anarumo, yes. But at the same time, is there a defensive coordinator out there, guys, that can come in and do anything differently with the personnel that's out there? I don't know. I don't think so. This is bad. I rambled a bit. I apologize. But you guys' thoughts?
That's what I said coming into the season. That was my main concern was did this front office sit there and watch Jake Browning finish a game away from the playoffs and say, well, we'll swap Jake Browning for Joe Burrow and there's 3 wins. I think that's exactly what they said. I think they said we'll do exactly what we need to do to field a football team, and Joe Burrow is going to push us over the edge. I think this front office has put an immense amount of faith in Burrow and Chase in order to carry this team really almost exclusively. I know T. Higgins is still here, but big picture, I think they're putting a lot of pressure on the two of them to carry this team. And I think in these post-game press conferences, you're seeing that it's weighing on Burrow. He's having to play quarterback at an insane level of pocket presence and IQ to make even just routine plays with how poor this offensive line is in pass protection. He has no run game to back him up. I don't think there's a more stressful quarterback job out there right now than the Cincinnati Bengals one and what we're asking Joe Burrow to do. And then as soon as he comes off the field, we're asking him to be the head coach and lead the team and criticize the defense and talk to the players and organize a team that's floundering in a playoff race where they thought they were going to win a Super Bowl and get everyone up and excited and ready to go, and the players and the fans. And we're putting so much on Joe Burrow. And every time I watch these post-game press conferences, I see him starting to fade just a little bit about how much longer he can take this much pressure. And I think you're starting to kill part of what makes him so great, and it's the heart and the mind. How much longer can you ask him to keep going out there and putting his all on the line with no one backing him up until it comes back to bite him at the end of the year and long term? I mean, this season could truly unravel the Bengals for a long time. And that's what he said right there at the end. He said the cornerstones of this franchise will be remembered about how they handled the last 5 games of this season. And he's absolutely right. And I think he was talking about the leaders of the team and himself, Trey Hendrickson, Jamar Chase, all those guys. I also think he's talking about Mike Brown in the front office. How you handle this season, how you attack the offseason, how you fill these holes and get back to a competitive place right away. I think that was the first open push he's really given to this front office to make some serious changes about how they operate with this team this offseason and commit to winning. Carson Palmer tried to do the same thing, and it didn't work, and we know how that all unfolded. And as we're watching this window come to life, maybe Carson Palmer was more right than any Bengals fan wanted to give him credit for, which is very, very painful to say. But right now, it looks like we're staring nearly the same thing in the face.
I mean, there's just like, I don't have any words left, because even if what you said was true and if what Joe Burrow said was true, it's important how you handle these 5 games. Everybody should, I would say, in Bengals fandom, wants them to lose these games.
Yeah.
Because you want a better draft pick, right? The Carolina Panthers yesterday were one terrible fumble away from having the same exact record with 125 fewer points and a differential of minus 175. Same record as the Bengals. They are having one of the worst seasons you could possibly have. It's not going to get better. It can't be fixed. Joe Burrow and the offense are having one of the best offensive seasons a team can possibly have, and they don't win games. They don't win anything. So if I were the Bengals, again, it's a tough place to be, because clearly the right step here is to lose out. There is I think they gave him a 3% chance to make the playoffs. So if you rationally believe that this team could make the playoffs, that's over now. 0.0%. I think Reed said that yesterday on the show, and he's right. It's completely over. The season's dead. The only thing that you have left is to try to make Joe Burrow happy. I imagine there's going to be conversations as to Zach Taylor, and we can probably get into that next segment, because I know I have my thoughts, and I know Jacob has his thoughts on it, and Casey has his thoughts, and Reed has everybody has their thoughts on the coaching situation for the Bengals. But similarly to the Reds, and I hate to do that, but we're Cincinnati, so I have to bring it up. At some point, you need a change, and this is when you make the change. This is it.
All right, this is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. The Cincinnati Bengals, of course, coming off a 44-38 loss against Pittsburgh. Of course, coming off the bye week, too, and we'll talk about that more in depth coming up around the corner. More Bengals Steelers reaction. We'll take a look at some of the top games and results from around the NFL here in just a bit. And yes, we will get to that 13-10 loss, Ohio State against that team up north for the 4th straight year. Miserable. I'm miserable. You guys are miserable, but we'll chipper it up. We'll chipper it up.
I'm not miserable about that one.
You're not miserable. I my bad. Jake, what up? We'll be right back. More off the bench when we come back. And we are back. Justin Kenner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, and Jacob Kissin with you here. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Happy Monday. Hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving Day weekend. The other thing, too, like I said, from a sports perspective, not a lot of people had a great weekend. But overall, hope everyone enjoyed some friends, family, and enjoyed some days of work. But we're back at it, kicking off the week. And, I joked to start the show. I'm like, we do the same show after a Bengals loss every time because they lose the same way every time. And it's wild. The games that they had, there's some games that they've won where the offense was not very good. They were horrible against the Browns and won. They were horrible against the Giants and won. But, man, if the offense played against the Giants and Browns the way that they have against everybody else, if the offense plays against the Patriots in week 1 the way they have everybody else, those are 2 wins already, Giants-Browns, but those are blowout wins instead of nail-biter wins like they were. But every loss is the same. We talk about it every time, how the stats that Joe Burrow puts up, the way he plays, the way Jamar Chase plays, this offense, the way they just produce, and the fact that they're trying everything they can in the fourth quarter down the stretch to come away with the win and narrowly coming away with the loss every time. And it's wild, too, because there were moments, guys, where the Steelers were up big, and I'm like, yeah, this game, it felt like it should be done. But just every time I thought it was done, I was about to change it, they'd come right down the field. It's 1st and goal, and they punch it in the end zone with a couple minutes left. You're like, Bengals still have a shot. They always have a shot. They just haven't been able to capitalize on it because that's how freaking bad this defense was. Look, I like Russell Wilson. I've been higher on Russell Wilson than you guys have. When he went to Pittsburgh, I know you guys wanted Justin Fields. We've been back and forth on that. I thought a veteran guy like that going in with the George Pickens and a run game and that defense, it's exactly what the doctor ordered for them. They've been great since then. Russell Wilson's good. That offense is okay. They're not as good as what they looked yesterday. You talked about it, Jake. That was turn back the hands of time. Russell Wilson yesterday. Yeah. He will not have a game like that the rest of his career unless they play Cincinnati. That's the only thing at this point. Russell Wilson's not as good as he was yesterday. That offense is not as good as they were yesterday. In fact, Pittsburgh had not scored more than 14 points and a half all season. They doubled that in the first half yesterday. This defense is a huge, huge problem. We talked about that to open the show. But, Elliot, I'll toss it to you. I know you had some thoughts about the coaching at this point, and none of these are hot takes. Everyone's been critical of coaching throughout the year. But as the losses continue to pile up, it's one thing if they're getting blown out because of how bad the defense is. But when you're losing this many close games, a lot of times we give credit to coaches who win one-possession games, who win close games. Zach Taylor's losing close games, even with the deficiencies on defense. Like, you're one better decision away from coming out on top in these one-possession games. They're not doing it. They're losing these games. Coaching, obviously, at the top of when you rank all the priorities or the deficiencies with this team. Elliot, where are you at with the coaching at this point? I know people are tired of hearing it, but it's the reality, and that's how sports works. The Bears moved on from their coach when that loss pushed them over the edge. Was this loss enough to push a lot of Bengals fans over the edge, in your opinion?
Yeah, well, this was it because this was the final nail in the coffin. This is the death punch, and there's nothing left to cheer for. If you win that game yesterday, it's almost significantly worse for all of us. It's just because you have to keep acting and pretending like the Bengals have a chance, that the Bengals are worth something, and they're not. The defense has, as Jacob said earlier, it's gotten worse.
Yesterday was their worst game of the season.
Coming out of a bye week. You had 2 weeks. That's what you look like 2 weeks off. That's insane. Sorry, Elliot.
No, you're good. It's gotten significantly worse. And I'm not going to sit here and say that the talent on the defensive side of the football is anything that's close to being worth a damn. But there has to be some semblance of a reason that they give up. They had a pick six yesterday, and it was like it was nothing. They had the Bengals defense returned an interception for a touchdown. They scored 44 points. The other team scored 44 points and won the game. There's no words left. If I were the Bengals, and I'm not, but if I were, I'd look at the coaching staff. And then I'd look at Joe Burrow, who's getting paid $55 million a year, and I'd say that is more important than whatever we got going on over here in the other circle. The coaches, the coaching staff as a whole, it's time to move on. It's time to move on. Lou Anarumo, whatever good defense he had in the past, or whatever defense we gave him credit for, that's gone. Zero. I don't even blame Lou Anarumo. That's like he's not I think he's probably number 3 on my coaches / staff who I'm mad at. Zach Taylor, I was talking in our group chat yesterday. He's an offensive mind, right? He's in control of the offense. What about is it not your responsibility to look after what the hell happens on the defensive side? It's like, you guys remember The Office when I forget who's Saber came in. Saber came in, and you have Michael Scott and Jim. Jim was in charge of the day-to-day, and Michael Scott was big picture. And she looks at him, Joy Bennett, and she goes, hey, so I'm paying you each to do half a job. Zach Taylor shouldn't get credit because he does half a job. That's what he's doing. He's doing
Can I interrupt you right there?
half the job.
I'm interrupting you. I'm very impressed with that. I like that. That's a good time. I like that. I'm a bad interrupter. I get that. But this one I'm intentionally interrupting to say nice analogy there. I love that. I want to steal that. That was excellent. Continue. We've hit pause. I'm hitting resume. Very well done. I love that. I love The Office, and I love anytime you can intermingle it to a sports take. That was very well done, Elliot. Keep going.
I'm not going to sit here and I'm not going to give the head coach half credit. And really it's 1/3 credit because the special teams unit looks like trash as well. Evan McPherson, congratulations on sneaking by the way, a hooked field goal from 33 yards. Congratulations on that make. The team is terrible as a whole. Congratulations to the offense. They've figured it out. And if Zach Taylor was only brought in to just ignore 2/3 of the team, he's done a great job. The offense looks good. I have a hard time believing that's the role of a head coach. I have a hard time believing Andy Reid doesn't take a good glance at the other 2/3 of the team. Other coaches do it. I don't know why our coach gets the pass because the offense looks the best it's ever been. Defense is the worst in the history of sports. The special teams unit's been terrible all season long. It's a disaster. I'm not going to give him credit. He gets no credit from me. Zero. Zach Taylor, whether or not he's going to get fired, I don't even care. The fact of the matter is, there is nobody on this planet that should sit here and think Zach Taylor's been doing enough this season. He hasn't. There is one thing that matters when you are a coach, and that is your win-loss record. For 2 years, he has failed. Somehow, by the grace of God, he won 9 games last year, and that's saving him right now. But it's time to move on. It's time to move on. It's time to reset the franchise. You're going to get a top 12 pick. So let's make the most of it. Let's hire somebody who knows what they're doing. And let's move on. Lou Anarumo, bye-bye. It's definitely Lou Anarumo's time to go. But if I were the Bengals,
if he makes it to the end of the show, I'm going to be a little bit upset.
But it's like I don't know what else to do. The Bears at least realized after one of the most disgusting losses truly of all time, they're like, all right, we're done.
And they've never fired a coach in the season in their 100-year history, 100-plus year history. Maybe the Bengals do something.
You can't possibly think that Zach Taylor is the answer. What was he saying? Every game's an opportunity still. We got a great opportunity. I know he has to say that. That's you can't come up there and say I quit. But it's over. You've lost it. You had the best season a quarterback and wide receiver duo could possibly have, and you've lost everything. So moving forward, and I'll hear Jacob's thoughts here, I'm not giving Zach Taylor credit for doing 1/3 of the job.
I think we have helped the rest of the NFL. We have officially figured out how far away from Sean McVay you can be before you're not worth a damn.
Yeah.
It's the quarterback's coach. Because Shane Waldron was also hired to be the Bears OC from the quarterback's coach position of McVay. Taylor, the quarterback's coach for the Rams before he came to the Bengals. So that is the furthest point in the Rams staff that you can be from McVay and still be a good coach. So shout out the rest of the league. They now know that. In terms of firing Taylor, I've been a Taylor defender a lot longer than most. And I think the main takeaway from that is that I don't think their Bengals are going to fire him, at least going into Sunday's game. So I didn't want to put all my eggs in the basket of I won't be in on this team next year if he's the coach. After yesterday, I don't know how you keep him as the head coach. I just don't know how you do it. It's been so bad. I can't watch that game yesterday and think that we're going to rattle off these 3 wins in a row that we've been counting as 3 wins in a row all year. Cowboys, Browns, Titans, there's no way we win all 3 of those games. This defense can't play 3 good games in a row. Mason Rudolph's going to throw for 400 yards. The other reason I think Zach Taylor should be talked about as staying is because the name that's being thrown around, or names that are being thrown around to replace him, are just more guys that are going to be asked to do 1/3 of the job. I want to go hire someone that's not a play caller. I want to go hire a Dan Campbell. I want to go hire a defensive guy, a culture guy, not an offensive coordinator who's going to come and call an offense that can score 40 points, because we have that. I have faith in Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and the pieces of that offense that they can take most of that on their own shoulders. And I don't necessarily mean calling plays or coaching the offense or anything like that. I'm saying they don't need a lot of help to be great. So I wouldn't go hire an offensive coordinator as a head coach. I'd go hire a guy on defense that can turn this defense around without a ton of talent. Because I don't think the Bengals can hold their breath and wait till they have a talented defense. There's way too many pieces that aren't NFL players right now. You got to go get a defensive guy to take over the head coach position if and when you fire Taylor. Or if you keep Taylor, you got to fire Lou Anarumo and go get a real defensive coordinator that can take over that side of the ball. And I'm talking about a Matt Eberflus, a Brandon Staley, a Dennis Allen, a guy that's been a head coach, been fired, knows how to run a team, knows how to run a defense, is creative with their coverages and blitzes to a point where they might not need top-end talent. I think that's the Bengals' most realistic option to success. And if that's a head coach that can do that, that's great. If it's keeping Taylor and hiring a defensive coordinator that we think can do that, that's great. I still don't necessarily think the Bengals are going to fire Taylor unless out of these last 5 games they lose 3 of them.
Do you not think that's a possibility?
No, I think it's a possibility. But I'm saying I think that's what's required.
I guess that's. I mean, it's just like you can't watch them and say that the coaching staff is doing a good job. That's over now. Good teams with good quarterbacks, guess what? They don't miss the playoffs. Very rarely. Very rarely do they miss the playoffs. Last year was that rarely. They get an excuse for that. There is zero. This is the easiest schedule I've truly ever seen, and they've failed at an all-time level. Sorry, Casey, go ahead.
So I was on your guys' side pretty much all day yesterday until I decided to listen to the post press conference interviews with the players after the game was over. And I listened to it, listened to Joe, listened to Jamar, listened to T, listened to Jermaine Pratt. And
he guaranteed a win. He guaranteed a win.
He said tackling.
He pulled a Kinner. He pulled a Kinner.
Pratt.
That's what he did.
Pratt's one was interesting. I'm going to save that one for last because I think Joe Burrow kind of said it without really saying it. And that was the guys need to play hard. They need to play hard because the tape is out there for other GMs to look at. To me, that sounds like maybe they're not playing as hard. They're not playing as on top of it as they should. And that's really caused a lot of the issues. They're not making plays. And as I'm coming into work today, I'm listening to Jermaine Pratt, and all he can say is Russell Wilson's getting the ball out quick. We're not fast enough to make a play. And I'm going, that's the answer. They don't have guys on this defense to make a play. They're not fast enough. They're not experienced enough to make plays when it matters. And that's the whole difference of the game. You can point at the turnovers and say that's the difference of the game, and it really is. One turnover is the difference in that game, and that's a fumble 6. It is. It's just guys not making plays, and they've said that all year long, and it's tired. It's annoying to hear. But this roster is just not good enough. And I was so hell-bent on believing that it was the coaching staff, but I feel like Lou has no other choice but to play prevent defense, because if he doesn't play prevent, it's just bombs away, Pickens is wide open down the field. If they don't have 8 guys dropping, they will have wide open receivers for 30 yards, 40 yards, 50 yards for touchdowns. Now, you get the 13, dump it off to the running back for 12 yards every play. But at least they're slowing them down a little bit. Otherwise, they're going to give up 2-minute, 80-yard, 4-play touchdowns like they did against the Chargers. Yeah. So it's like I there's a lot of blame to go around. But I don't think this coaching staff has the answers at all for what the roster is. They don't have what has been presented to them since the beginning of the season. They don't have the answers. And quite frankly, maybe we would have had better answers if Dax Hill and DJ Turner didn't get hurt. Maybe. It might have looked a little different. But I don't know, guys. It feels like we aren't that far away, but we're super far away. And I just don't know if it's because it's the coaching staff, because I've seen what Lou can do with just one or two more guys. I mean, this defense is not that far away from what it was in 2021. They're
on
missing
paper.
On paper. That's what I'm getting at. It's like on paper, they're a Jesse Bates and a DJ Reader away from really being something different. And I just don't know, like, is it really that? I don't know. I just can't blame coaching staff when even the players themselves are going, we're not fast enough, we're not strong enough, we're not making plays, we're not trying hard. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, when the players themselves, and I know that they want to take accountability for themselves, but when they are the ones saying, like, especially Pratt, that's the one that's really got me off on the coach's take. When he himself is saying, Russell Wilson is just getting the ball out quick, and that he's asked, is there anything that you could do schematically to change the game plan? And he goes, no, we're just not fast enough. I think that tells you everything you need to know. The players are just not good enough, period.
They're dead last in getting to the quarterback. I agree with Casey. I mean, I just think that when you're a coaching staff, a head coach in the NFL, and you see this issue consistently happen week after week and there's no answer for it, falls on you. It's your responsibility. It's great that he calls the best offense in the league. He also calls the worst defense in the league. So I just we can even it out however you want. It's time to move on. You're paying your quarterback $55 million. He's an MVP if he's on any other roster this year, and this is the way we've gone. We've lost every close game under the sun. Every other team wins those games. Bengals haven't gotten any luck this year. Not that you can just blame it all on luck, but that's the fact of the matter. And the Bengals beat bad teams. The Bengals are a bad team. The Bengals are a bottom 5 team in the NFL right now. They're horrible, truly atrocious. So if we'll see what happens against the Cowboys. They're 6-point favorites in that game. I don't know who made that line. I don't know why we made that line. In my mind, I would put every dollar I have on the Cowboys. I'm done betting on the Bengals, though. I'm done. I just can't. I mean, it's nonsense. But it's like we don't know. We don't know. We don't have enough answers for who they are, and that's not a good thing heading into next season. That's not a good thing because we're about to lose T. Higgins. You lose T. Higgins. Where's Jermaine Burton? What did he do yesterday?
Oh, you want to know how many snaps he played yesterday?
Was he inactive?
No, he played 2 snaps.
What did he do?
No, he just played 2 snaps.
Okay, he was just out there?
Yeah.
Good. So you're going to have to go into the draft. You're going to have to draft another wide receiver. Jermaine Burton's gone.
High.
Bye-bye.
Like high in the draft.
Bye-bye, Jermaine Burton. And then you're going to have to replenish the defense as well. So now you got to replenish the offense that's been incredible this year and the defense that's been atrocious. They're not good at drafting. Whose responsibility is that?
The guy that's been the GM for 25 years?
That as well. But the coaching staff also, I believe, has some responsibility in drafting.
Well, we should be better this year. They're going to have a lot more time to scout.
That's right.
I mean, the last couple of years, they've been playing right up until the end of the season. These guys haven't been able to get out and scout their position groups. So maybe this year getting a 5-week head start.
That might be it. That might be the key.
We'll draft to the moon. Best draft class of all time.
With 6 draft picks, by the way.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah. Khalil Herbert's been awesome.
Oh, no. Forgot about that.
Yeah, no.
14-yard run.
We have massive, massive concerns on this team, and there's more holes.
We don't have a kicker.
There's more holes this offseason. It's crazy.
We don't have a kicker.
At this point,
you do, and you're paying him for a while.
Oh, we're gonna cut him. We'll cut him this year. There's an out after this season.
We don't have a kicker. We'll lose our number 2 wide receiver. We have like we're 0 for 11 on the 1 for 11 on the defensive side.
Tell me what I'm missing here.
We
need a corner one.
Okay.
Well, no, hey, use that. Tease that. Let's pick up with. No.
Bengals,
I'm so sorry.
You're good. Bengals positional needs next segment.
Yes, I'm sorry.
We need a lot.
I'm being a jerk. I apologize. Let's just use this for the third segment, if you don't mind. We'll step away for a few moments.
You're the timing czar. You got to tell us what to do.
Yeah, there's a czar joke, but we're good. It's a Monday. We'll be right back. We're off the bench next. Bengals positional needs when we come back. Jacob, when I interrupted you, what I meant to say was pardon.
Oh.
All right. Cool. Yeah.
That's right.
I'm not polite.
Pardon your take.
Oh, yeah. No free ads. My bad, Casey. My bad. Oh, man. We welcome you back off the bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. The losses continue to pile up for the Cincinnati Bengals despite a historic season offensively from Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and in the Cincinnati Bengals offense. And the crazy part is this offense has some deficiencies too. Like this offense isn't as clean cut. Like when you look at the numbers, you would think, man, this is one of the most explosive offenses in football. And technically, statistically, it is. But there's a lot of glaring issues. We'll get to the O-line here shortly, and maybe I'm overblowing that, but that's just how many problems are on this team that it's like, how far down on the list do we, before we even get to that? But Jake, you guys were about to go into the only 6 draft picks coming up. I haven't even processed that. There's a lot of holes on this team. This team isn't traditionally one that is super aggressive in free agency. And you already traded a draft pick. You only have 6 draft picks coming up with this draft to plug a lot of holes and deficiencies. And there's a lot of trust that has been lost between the front office and the fans over the last couple of years now. A lot of positional needs, Jake, take over from here. But those positional needs are what? And how do they address all of these through free agency and the draft when you have limited draft picks and a team that traditionally isn't super aggressive free agent-wise?
Yeah, I mean, you guys feel free to let me know what I'm missing. But corner,
okay,
at least one, probably more than one. You need safeties, probably plural.
Okay.
You need interior D-line. You need linebackers. You need edge rushers. You need 2 starting guards. You need a backup running back. If T. Higgins leaves, you need a wide receiver too. If T. Higgins doesn't leave, you need another edge rusher because that means you are probably letting Trey go.
Yep.
You need a running back too because Zach Moss is hurt.
Kicker.
We got a punter.
We got a punter.
We
do have a really good punter.
We have a really good punter.
And he has been showcased this season. So shout out to my guy Rico.
That's right. And Gesicki's a free agent. Eric All, depending on his recovery, you could need a tight end.
Oh, I forgot we do need a tight end.
Right. Ted Karras, do you believe in Matt Lee to take over for him? He's winding down on his contract. We're talking about a multi-year rebuild here. We're going to have to look into the future because some of these guys aren't going to be as good when we're competitive again in a year or two. Orlando Brown, 2 years left on his contract. Was playing through an injury yesterday. Certainly didn't look great. Going to need him to get healthy before we can make a final decision on him. But adding left tackle to that list would not be nice. Out of the team, there's 22 starters on offense and defense. I think we need 18 positions.
Yeah.
It's an insane spot for the Bengals to be in this year. They're going to be able to get close to $100 million in cap if they make the cuts that I think they should make. That's Kappa, that's Hubbard, that's Geno Stone, that's Sheldon Rankins. You can get a lot of money off these books, and you can overhaul the defense. Personally, right now, looking at the Bengals roster makeup and how this offseason outlook is trending, I would say you trade Trey Hendrickson to the NFC, put that money into T. Higgins, use those draft picks on an aging edge rusher to rebuild the defense from scratch. Tear it down to the studs. When you have 3 guys that are giving you anything worth paying on the entire team, I think at some point you just say, screw it. We're going to pay those guys. Who else are you paying at this point? I don't watch the Bengals and see anyone on the team that deserves an extension other than Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins. Not a single player. Trey Hendrickson's having the best season of his career, the best edge rushing season in the NFL, and it's not moving the needle for this defense
at all.
So what do you want next year? You want him to get 30 sacks? Maybe then we won't be the worst pass rushing team in football.
28th.
I think you trade him to a team in the NFC. I don't want to play him. Trade him to the NFC. Get a second or third rounder. Hell, if the Lions win the Super Bowl, maybe you get 32. Give him a third in Hendrickson for 32 or something like that. I think you can get some serious value after this season for Trey Hendrickson. And I think even with the injury history for T. Higgins, I would seriously contemplate extending him because I don't watch this Bengals team and see anywhere else the money should go.
Yeah, Mr. Mo asked in the chat, why would you pay T. Higgins? You only sign a second wide receiver if it's a luxury. You pay T. Higgins because if you don't have an offense, then what the hell is this team?
Also, if T goes, you're paying another wide receiver.
Yeah.
We've also seen, even without the offensive line, T and Jamar and Joe go to Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Like that offense works. We know that it works with just those guys. So I'm okay with signing T. Higgins because, like you said, there's no one else on this team that deserves to be extended. I sent that tweet at you guys. Dax Hill's 5th-year contract.
Yeah.
It's what, $16 million, and Jesse Bates $14 million. I'm not going to bring that up, but I'm just saying, like, you're going to have to start making some tough choices. Do you really want to keep Dax Hill around? Injury history, the out of position, and all this stuff that we've done up to this point on this defense has made it really, really tough now to make those tough decisions. I think that trading Trey Hendrickson is top of the list. I think you do tear it down to the studs because the only way that you're going to be able to build something is by having a guy to build around, and we don't have a guy to build around, period. Trey Hendrickson is too old, and he's wanted out here now over the summer to where you can't feel comfortable unless you like gave him a massive contract, which I just don't see them doing because they don't pay guys over 30. So I'm with you. I think you get as much draft capital as possible, and you try to land a guy that you can build a defense around, and you go from there. Because you know if you have Joe, if you have Jamar, and you have T, that offense is going to be a top 10 offense because that's what it is right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I see. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I was going to say, like I said, Mr. Mo was it that said, the T. Higgins would be like a luxury thing. Like, I think a lot of times in football, and we do this in sports where we put like certain rules on things. Like, I think you have to make decisions that are best for your team versus, well, teams don't do that. Teams don't. If you have this many holes, you don't pay T. Higgins. But I agree with everything you guys are saying. At a certain point, the identity of this team is Joe Burrow, yes. But at the same time, it's like if that's what you have to lean into that. Because you can't just assume that whoever you go get in the draft or in free agency is going to totally turn it around. You know what you have. Like, it's not a tryout. Hey, let's bring T here and hope that it works. You know that it works. Even with the deficiencies now, worst defense in the league, and you still have a chance to win football games. If this defense just improves marginally, just slightly, they're coming out on top of at least 2 of these games that they've lost thus far, and it's a completely different type of season at this point. This team has so many holes to fill, yes, but because of Joe Burrow and this offense, it closes the gap on a lot of the issues that you're having right now. And just a slightly better defense, you've picked up an extra couple wins throughout the season to this point, and it's a completely different vibe at this point. So you guys aren't even talking about rehauling it to the point where you got a top 10 defense. It's just don't be as pathetically, putridly bad as what you are right now. I get what he's saying. That's a luxury thing, but I agree with you guys. You have to bring T back at this point. I thought as more deficiencies popped up, that was working against bringing him back. If anything, it's only highlighting why you need to bring him back, because at some point you have to know what you have. You know what you have in T. You don't know what you have anywhere else, even if you do bring in new players next year.
100%. And if you let T walk, you're then tying an arm behind your back and saying we're either using our first or second round pick on a wide receiver or paying decent money in free agency for a wide receiver. I think regardless of who the head coach or OC is, you need 2 wide receivers in an NFL offense. And for people in the chat to say people don't extend to 2 wide receivers, I would argue that almost every team with 2 elite wide receivers in recent memory has extended them both. Yeah. I mean, Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, both massive paydays. There's tons of holes in Miami. They paid Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Anyone with 2 top 15 wide receivers has been keeping them. It's just been what's happening with the exception of Kansas City, and that's because they found a hack to the salary cap, and it's have a generational receiver play tight end, but you don't have to pay him any money.
In hypothetical land, then yeah, I'd trade T. Higgins, and I'd trust the coaching staff and the front office to be able to find a suitable replacement. In a hypothetical world, that's what I would do. But unfortunately, we don't have that. We don't have guys that can draft. We don't have guys I can trust to find a replacement. So until I have those guys, I'm going to say keep the good guys that we have, and we'll see what we can do then. Trey Hendrickson, being the president of Moron Island isn't that you don't win any prizes for that. He's a very good defensive player that people will want and will utilize on their team. He is just on an island by himself right now with the talent that's around him. It doesn't make any sense to keep him back there if the rest of that entire squad is going to be as bad as they've been. It just doesn't make sense to me. If I can get 2 draft picks from Trey Hendrickson, I'll take it.
Being the president of Moron Island. I like that. Another good one. You're on fire today.
Thank
Elliot.
you. Thank you.
All right, we'll step away for a few moments. We'll close. We'll do final thoughts on the Bengals. Obviously, coming out of the weekend, take a look at some of the other top results of the Week 13 of the NFL season. Monday Night Football later on tonight. The Browns looking to go for the Ohio trifecta. Ohio State loses, the Bengals lose. The Browns, a 6-point dog tonight on Monday Night Football in Denver against the Broncos. And then, of course, we'll talk about Ohio State, the loss against that team up north for the 4th straight season, and a lot happening in the world of college football over the weekend as well. We have Conference Championship weekend coming up this weekend, of course, and then, Selection Sunday also coming up this weekend as well. So a lot to dive into throughout the week. We'll have more off the bench when we come back. So the show, obviously, we appreciate you guys listening on radio, but live on Chatterbox Sports on YouTube. The fun part about that is, at least for you guys, I stay out of it because it's usually me being attacked. I'm the victim here, right? Like, I don't start anything.
That's right. That's what you are.
Just innocently doing nothing and just attacking me for no reason. But no, the cool part about the chat is like, yes, like you guys get to be a part of the show and your opinions are implemented in the show as well. And some people seem to be kind of shocked about how many takes of trading Trey Hendrickson away have been, brought forth on the show today. You guys brought up a good point during the break a little bit. Like, this team is the worst defense in the NFL with Trey Hendrickson. Trey Hendrickson, he is the most valuable piece of this defense, and not really on the field. I think off the field, I think the return that you can get for Trey Hendrickson makes him even more valuable than what he has been already. And no offense to him, I'm not saying he's not valuable on the field, but like, even with having a dominating presence like him out there, it hasn't done anything through no fault of his own. That is not his fault. But you guys mentioned it. Only 6 draft picks. You only have 6 draft picks coming up, and you have so many holes to fill. And you're bringing in and saying that you have 6 draft picks, but really the top 3 picks are where that's your higher percentage chance of getting impact players right off the bat. Anything after that, you're just hoping that someone can come in and make a difference at this point. There is a lot of overhaul that is potentially coming with this roster. And now I get the people saying, well, you build around Trey Hendrickson on defense, but let's be clear. He's going to ask for a lot of money after this season. I mean, he already threatened to he demanded the trade in the offseason. He wasn't super aggressive with it, but I think he's going to be even more aggressive this upcoming offseason than he was last year. He demands that trade, or he wants paid, or is going to demand that trade. You're going to make Jamar Chase the highest paid wide receiver in football and pay him what the going rate is for a dominant pass rusher in the NFL. And now guess what? You've put a humongous chunk of money into 2 dominant players that you have on this roster, and you're not better at that point. You're not better. I mean, you're better because you have Jamar Chase long-term, don't get me wrong. But a year from now, you're not better if all the money in the offseason goes to those 2 players who are already on this roster and has as many holes as they do. You got to pay Jamar Chase. You're not going to pay Hendrickson. He has more value to you off this team than he does on the team currently, just because of the return. They need more draft picks, and that's what Hendrickson brings to the table. I understand completely. A few weeks ago, this take would have been ripped apart. I don't think it's that crazy of a take right now when you look at how many problems that they have defensively, no doubt.
Here's the other thing too, Kenner, that I don't think the chat realizes is that, you're risking then both sides of the ball being completely different and an unknown territory if you do let T walk. At least you know that this is going to be a top 10 offense, regardless of what the offensive line looks like with T, with Jamar, and Joe. You know that. It's been that way for 4 years, even with T missing lots of games. So I think that is a guarantee, funny enough, keeping T. Higgins around. The other side is Trey, even on this defense, has not made a big enough impact to justify keeping him around if you have to pay him this major contract extension. He has 11.5 sacks this season, and I'm sorry to say this, but 4 of them came from the Raiders. Let's be real. So I think we can look at it a little objectively and say that he's not making a big enough impact to take this roster from a bottom of the tier defense to a middle of the tier defense. It's still really bad, guys. He hasn't had a sack in like 3 weeks. So let's not kid ourselves. What they need to do is find guys to start building a defense around. And that's going to take a while. This defense is in a position where basically every spot is up for grabs, quite literally.
Yeah.
So I think you need to get young, and the only way you do that is by drafting guys, and they have to hit on guys. I'm sorry. That's the only way they're going to get any better is they have to hit on guys. And a lot of you in the chat are saying they can't hit on guys. They've been terrible in the draft. Well, that's the only way that you're going to win in the NFL. You don't have a lot of money to spend. And that's just the nature of the beast. You have to be good at drafting in order to have sustained success. And it's not that hard. It's really not. If you just look at the draft that the Bengals have had, they've had guys on the board that they should have taken over other guys, and they just refuse to do so. And it's like consensus guys, too. It's like we're picking Drew Sample over A.J. Brown. Like we're picking guys like Jackson Carman over whoever. I mean, it's just the list goes on and on. So I'm going to be in the camp that I want to have a guarantee, keeping a top 10 offense intact. Keep T, keep Jamar, and you go from there. You spend the rest of your time, the next couple seasons, focusing on defense, because it's just basically what you have to do.
Yeah. Everyone in the chat also saying the Bengals can't draft defense, but they draft wide receiver very well. So let T. Higgins walk and draft a new wide receiver too. Bengals have been really good at drafting wide receiver. Jermaine Burton, Andre Yoshivas, Charlie Jones, really making a big difference in the mid-round picks. I would argue the Bengals have had generational talents fall in their lap at wide receiver. A.J. Green, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. That gives them that narrative.
That's the thing is, like, they did it with T. Higgins. T. Higgins was one of the guys that was on the top of the board at the time, and they took him because it was the obvious choice to make. Same with Jamar. They had an easy choice between Panay and Jamar. It's not that hard. Now, we had debates over it. And we can talk about that later, looking back at the history of the Bengals. But it wasn't that hard of a decision for them to make. It really wasn't. So saying that they're really good at drafting at any position, and I think is a little bit misleading. So I think there's not a guarantee in drafting, but the only way to get better is to start building around young pieces. And the only way to do that is through the draft. And you need lots of picks. You need lots of opportunities to hit on guys so then that you can start doing that.
The only way for the drafting or the poor drafting to not matter is if you have an owner that's willing to pour insane amounts of money into the roster so that when you miss on those picks, you just erase them and you get someone else in free agency. The Bengals don't have that, obviously. We all know that. So you have to hit on the draft, and if you don't hit in the draft, you never have a chance. So for everyone saying, hey, we can't draft, we got to just focus on free agency. If we can't draft, we can't win. So we have to figure out how to draft. It's point blank, it's that simple.
Yeah. I just think you need, and we have to figure out how to draft. You're asking the same coaching staff, the same GM to do the same thing that they've been unable to do for many years now. Which is why, again, I would say that we need to clean house. You got to clean house. And I don't think any one of you, either of you, says that the Bengals should be paying T. Higgins $30 million. I think if T. Higgins can fall into your lap for under $22 million somehow because he hasn't played this season at all, then that's when I pay T. Higgins. At least that's what I say. I'm not paying T. Higgins $30 million.
But I think, and I'm with you, but as much leverage as he has lost because of health, because of not being available, I think he could look at the Bengals and say, hey, because Jake said this before, there will be teams who have a lot of cap space who will pay him market value. the Bengals may not want to spend market value on him, but I think he might look at them and say, hey, you need me more than I need you because I can get my money elsewhere and I can go to contend. I can go to better football teams this offseason than this right here. I know I fit in this offense. I love playing with Joe Burrow, but Elliot, I agree, but I don't think he would stay for 22. I don't think he's going to stay for a penny less than what he can get elsewhere. I think he can go to Washington. He can go to other places, play with very good quarterbacks, and win football games while being paid market value. I don't know if he stays in Cincinnati for anything less. And that's the other thing. To your point, would Cincinnati even be willing to do that? I don't know either. The bottom line is there's so many question marks. I don't know. There's not one decision that they have to make coming up that I could put money on and guarantee that they're going to do. I can't guarantee that they'll fire Zach Taylor. I can't guarantee that they will extend or trade Trey Hendrickson. We can't even guarantee. Can we guarantee that Jamar Chase will be extended? Can you guarantee that's the most likely? But no, we can't guarantee anything because I never thought that they would even be in this position where they pissed him off this past offseason. I never even thought it would get to this point because we all thought it was for sure Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase are locks moving forward. You have the ownership come out and say we're going to bend over backwards, but then, they didn't bend over that far backwards. I think they did a light stretch. It wasn't even like, I don't know. There's so many decisions that this team has to make and so many problems and deficiencies. And that's the crazy thing that they've been this close. We've talked about it. 1 possession losses. They're this close, even with everything that's wrong with this team. They are so damn close and have so many decisions that they have to make moving forward. The offensive line that's been talked about, guys, like, am I overblowing that? Are there issues with this offensive line that have you concerned moving forward as well? I know we spend so much time with the run game that's lacking, with the really outside of Jamar Chase and the future of T unknown and not having any clear direction at wide receiver after Jamar Chase at this point, and all the problems on defense and Lou Anarumo, all this. Where does the offensive line stack as major concerns for you moving forward?
You got to replace half of them right off the rip. So that's a problem. You got to bank on our guys being healthy. That's always a worry. But yeah, I mean, how many offensive linemen are we replacing? 2 or 3?
It's going to be 2, hopefully.
Yeah,
I mean, Karras is locked in. You gave him the extension, and he's been a fine center this year. He's been exposed by playing next to the 2 worst guards in football. I still have faith that Ted Karras is an above average, if not top tier center in the league. He has some pretty good grades across the board when he's not being left on an island with the 2 worst guards in football. I keep saying it because they are the 2 worst guards in football on the same team that was thought to win a Super Bowl this year. How do you do this? How does that happen? It's not a surprise. Cordell Volson hasn't improved a lick since he started for the Bengals in a Super Bowl. Alex Kapp has fallen off the face of the earth as he's aged. You're going to cut him and save a ton of money this offseason. Cordell Volson, I would imagine, is out. They benched him this week for Cody Ford. Cody Ford looked a lot better than Volson ever did. So maybe we'll have him in there. But yeah, you're going to need 2 new guards, and that's not something to overlook. I do think there's a lot of really interesting interior O-linemen in this draft class, and as this season progresses with the Bengals sitting on the couch for the playoffs, I'm sure we'll get into that. But yeah, if we're picking as high as we are, I think there's some good offensive linemen available in the mid-rounds in those positions that could slide in and play guard right away. So the Bengals are going to have to use some picks on the offensive side of the football, and even more of them if T. Higgins leaves, and that's something that certainly scares me with just 6 of them and so many needs on defense.
Is Pollock gone after this year? Did they get a new O-line coach?
Yeah, he doesn't have another year on his contract, so they'll just let him walk.
A lot of, nonetheless. But as we close this out with the Bengals side, just closing thoughts on the Bengals. Any closing points coming out of this weekend again in the loss against the Steelers? Just closing thoughts on the Bengals.
Yeah, season's over and the future's gone. Chad waits, $4.99 super chat as we head into a break here. At least we can rely on the Reds front office to do the right thing. ...
They're always reliable.
That's right.
Casey, any closing thoughts on the Cincinnati Bengals to close out the Bengals portion of the show?
No, I think we all grabbed our shovels and shoveled the dirt in the hole, in the 6 feet hole that we built.
And we're dead.
Bam, bam, bam. Coffin nails. There they go.
I was listening to the game yesterday, and this will be my final thought. I was listening to the game yesterday. I was out cutting trees, Christmas trees with my family. What? He interrupts. He interrupts every time. He interrupts every second. I wish he wouldn't interrupt. That's all I have.
Super Bowl window.
No.
Super Bowl window 1, shut and closed, locked. dead. Now we have to figure out how to open another one.
Yeah.
All right, we'll talk more Bengals throughout the week, of course. But not the result everyone was anticipating or hoping for, especially coming out of a bye week. Especially against a team like Pittsburgh, who, obviously and by the way, that defense for Pittsburgh I think that offense is not as good as I thought, but I don't think that defense is as good as what they tout it to be. I mean, they let the Browns throw all over them. Obviously, we expect the Bengals to throw all over them. I don't know if that Steelers defense is as good. Who's the best defense in the AFC, by the way? Is it the Chiefs?
I think it's the Steelers or the Chargers.
Steelers are Chargers, and they have their deficiencies too. The Chargers are one of the worst tackling teams in football from that regard. Steelers, you could throw on them. You can make plays on them. The Chiefs defense has been very inconsistent. They have weapons. And the Browns, that defense should have been the forefront of what should have been a successful season. And that it doesn't matter. The Browns could have a top 5 defense. It don't matter. They're not in the playoff picture. So that's the other thing too, is as dominant as the Bengals offense is, there's no one built to stop them in the AFC. Their defense actually is the only defense that could stop the Bengals offense is their own. And that's basically what it's come down to at this point. But all right, Jake, the good news is we could talk about the Buckeyes. Oh no, it's just another depressing Monday.
I can't wait for this one. I'm excited about this one.
I'm sure. Let's get to that. We'll talk Ohio State, 4th straight year they lose to Michigan, and we'll talk about the fight and the melee that broke out afterwards. We'll get to all of that coming up. We're off the bench next. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tistet with you here. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. A lot of NFL, a lot of Bengals talk today. We'll transition to the college football ranks right now. Ohio State, 13-10, the final for the 4th straight season. They lose to their arch nemesis, to their rival, to that team up north. Block out the M's, the biggest rivalry in knowledge, which I've acknowledged that it is. Guys, you'll get a kick out of this. I'm pissed off that they lost. I checked my phone, and it's a tweet from Everett that just says, "You did this." That's just all with the clown emoji. You did this, Kenner, with the clown emoji. It was my fault that the Buckeyes lost for the 4th straight year. Unbelievable.
I think he's right. I think he's right.
Yeah.
I
put a curse on him.
Well, to be fair, you did say you'd rather win the championship than beat Michigan. And
you'll get your wish.
That's valid.
Well, it might be
valid.
But I just think if you're an Ohio State fan, at least most of them, there's 2 goals. There's every single season there's 2 goals, and it's to beat Michigan, then it's to win the national championship. The issue there is it's usually in that order.
Yeah, I said after the game that I personally hope that Ohio State declines the playoff invitation. That'd be awesome. I think that'd be a great precedent to set. Tell them you're not coming. If they do choose to go to the playoff, which would be a bad decision, I hope they get a home playoff game. And I hope they lose by 40, because the worst thing that could happen to the Ohio State program is to go on and win a national championship this year and have Ryan Day coach this football team next year, because that's exactly what would happen if they rattled off these wins and won a championship and hoisted that trophy at the end of the year. Ryan Day would be back on the sideline next year. We'd lose to Michigan again and maybe go back-to-back as national champions, and it wouldn't matter at all because you can't beat Michigan. Ryan Day is 66-9 as the Ohio State head coach. 4 of those 9 losses have come to Michigan. You just can't have it. The expectations are one thing and one thing only in Columbus, and that expectation is to beat Michigan, and Ryan Day can't do it. During the week, Ryan Day said that losing his father was the only thing in his life that was harder than losing to Michigan. And I was like, well, that's an awesome quote. Like, he's committed to winning this game. He's locked in with this team. He's ready to roll. It means a lot to him. Well, looking back on it after that game, maybe it means too much. Maybe the pressure's getting to him a little bit. Maybe this game is being played up to be a lot bigger than just one game. Maybe he's not cut out for it anymore. I wonder if he's mentally broken coaching Ohio State anymore after that loss.
Yeah.
How can you lose a 4th one after saying all that, after losing a 3rd one, and then come back next year and just, we'll get him, we'll beat TTUN, woo. No, you're going to get ran out of the stadium again. And it's the same exact thing that's happened for the last 3 years, happened again on Saturday. You got bullied. You got it ran down your throat for 4 quarters. You had more talent at every single position other than the trenches than Michigan. And you didn't use your wide receivers because you had some puff out your chest, we're going to show that we can run the football. Good for you, Chip Kelly. You couldn't. And you cost Ohio State a football game. And everyone that's on Twitter, I had people responding to me yesterday saying Ohio State will still win a championship. I know Kinner is in that same boat. I don't care at all about this playoff. At all. If they win this championship, it's going to make me sick because I know Michigan will sell back-to-back champions shirts. And that's the worst thing that could happen to college football. It makes me sick that I'm going to have to watch them play in 3 weeks. And I think this vindicates me hating the 12-team playoff. 10-2 Ohio State losing as a 3-touchdown favorite at home to your rival, you should not get a chance to play for a championship.
It's bad for college football if you're like a fan of Ohio State. If you're a fan of like one of the blue bloods of football, and you're constantly trying to win a championship every year. But I would say if you're a casual college football fan like me, I think it's great.
9-3 Alabama sneaking in and winning, it's going to be awesome.
I like the idea of upsets. I like the idea of chaos, and that's what you're going to get this year because clearly there aren't 12 good teams. I mean, you're going to have, I would say, there's 3 legitimate contenders for a championship this season. I would put it at 3. I think there's Georgia, I think there's Ohio State, and I think there's Oregon.
Texas is favored over Georgia in the SEC championship.
Yeah, I know, and that's crazy to me. But maybe Texas if they beat Georgia and that. But I just don't think it's I think it's going to be fun for the casuals, and I think for the people that are fans of the really good teams, you're going to not like it as much. And that's fine. That's probably why they did it, though. They tried to get more casual fans more interested, and that's what it's going to be this year. Boise State's going to have a first-round bye, which is crazy. But that's the way it is. That's the way it's going to go for at least the next few years. I was watching the Ohio State game.
Well, if this season showed us anything, it just showed us we need more teams in the playoff.
Maybe like 34.
16-team expansion 34. In 2 years is going to be awesome.
So you mentioned it. I was watching the game, and shout out to me because I did have a responsible amount of money on Michigan to win that game, and they won. So they won outright. Just because I felt like 21 points was a little too much, despite how bad Michigan's roster is, and it is terrible. That whoever quarterback they had running out there, what's the kid's name?
Davis Warren.
Davis Warren was the worst quarterback truly I've ever seen throw football. 9 for 16, 62 yards, 2 picks, one of them being to a wide-open tight end, wide receiver. I don't know who it was. Wide open in the back of the end zone. Missed him, intercepted. Will Howard didn't have a good game either.
Nope.
But when they were throwing the ball, they were getting yards every single time. Why would you keep running for 2 yards? You're running for 2 yards a carry, 3 yards a carry.
The last 24 editions of Ohio State and Michigan have gone to the team that has led the game in rushing yards. I think Ohio State didn't care about the matchups, didn't care how they could win. They saw the way they've lost the last few years, and they said, we're better than Michigan. We're going to bully them the way they've bullied us. And they tried to prove things instead of trying to win a football game. And I think that's what cost them.
Yeah.
I think Chip Kelly and Ryan Day said, we're going to do what they've done to us, and they were unable to get it done.
Yeah, and that's been my biggest frustration and takeaway from that game is Ryan Day was obsessed with not just beating Michigan, but winning in a certain way. Ryan Day, the thin skin of Ryan Day has caught up with him, and here's why. His obsession, like you could say a lot of bad things about Ryan Day, it doesn't get to him. You question his team's toughness, that seems to be the trigger for him. And it's not a mocking thing. I'm being serious. Like, think back. The big question about Ohio State in that Notre Dame matchup 2 years ago was Ohio State was not a tough football team because they got bullied against Michigan the season before, right? Like, people were questioning the toughness of Ohio State. Ohio State goes on to beat Notre Dame on the road at night by one possession. It was an ugly football game, but a win's a win on the road, tough environment. It was a good win. I wasn't mocking the win. It became mockable when Ryan Day's obsession with, instead of just being happy about the win, he wanted to know where some 86-year-old dude was to prove a point that that's a tough football team out there. And I'm like, okay, that's great. I don't know. I mean, like, yes, tough, whatever your definition of tough is, but that was the first thing that caught my attention. Like, you're really triggered right now. You're really angry. You are upset. Like, they questioned your toughness. They questioned your ability to win and all of this. That's not what bothered you. They questioned your toughness. That's what he was upset about. Okay. Let's go to his obsession with toughness. They beat Penn State earlier this season, okay? They beat Penn State, and there's a clip of Ryan Day walking off the field. Ross Bjork and the school president are walking off the field, and there's a video close-up of Ryan Day. The first words out of Ryan Day's mouth to Ross Bjork and the school and the president of Ohio State was, man, that was tough. That we proved we're tough today. First words out of his mouth. Like his obsession with toughness, not like, man, that was a hell of a win. Great environment, man, good stuff. Like, That the first words out of his mouth, that was that was tough right there. We proved we're tough. His obsession with proving that you're tough. Everything out of his mouth, we're a tough football team. We're at every press conference the week leading into Michigan. Tough, 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 tough. Harbaugh never mentioned toughness in that matchup. Harbaugh never had to tell people that his team was tough because they just showed it. I'm sick of hearing the word tough out of Ryan Day's mouth because the results on game day more times than not are not that. And I'm here to also tell you that it's okay if your team is not a physically imposing team because Ohio State is a dominant finesse team.
You have 3 first-round wide receivers. 3.
Yes. You could have finessed the hell out of Michigan off the field. And the one time of the game that they showed that, Elliot, you alluded to it, it was that 2-minute offense, that hurry-up offense that they went into right to close out the half. I'm like, oh, okay, there it is. Ohio State's been notorious at starting slow throughout the season, and then all of a sudden they get them a rhythm offensively, and they never look back from there. 10-10 tie at halftime, 0-0 in my head heading into the second half. It's a brand new ball game. Ohio State's going to dominate in the second half because they got into that rhythm heading into halftime where Will Howard was just throwing the ball to wide open wide receivers. He wasn't even having to squeeze it into tight windows. His future NFL wide receivers, 3 of them to be exact, probably more than that, all were wide the F open, and he was getting him the football. They never went back to that. They never looked like that in the second half because Ryan Day said, no, we know we could win that way, but I don't want to win that way. I want to go back to that toughness thing. I want to win and I want to be tough. And you proved that you weren't tough. And that's the problem. I've said before, Ohio State could be a lot of different things. They can ground and pound, which they couldn't. I thought with Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson that they could be a ground and pound team. They couldn't. A lot of that has to do with lack. It's not their skill set more than having 3 starters on the offensive line out, your big center in the middle, obviously, who's going to open up a lot of room for you up the middle. With him being out, that was crucial right there. But you kept running up the middle. A lot of their success, actually, when they did run the football, they were pitching it to the outside. It was finesse. It wasn't power football, and that was the problem for Ryan Day because even the wrinkles in the windows where they could have success, he refused to go there because he wanted to win in a tough way. Ryan Day lost them that football game. And then on top of all of that, the clock blunder down the stretch. You have all those timeouts. There's 2 minutes remaining. You would have had a chance to go down the field and potentially tie it up to go into overtime, and your team didn't even have the chance because for the second time this season, clock blunders cost you a game. The clock blunders at the end of the Oregon game, a lot of people they shook it off. Ryan Day's a great coach, great situational coach. That's not a problem. But you have 2 losses this year, and both losses to close out the games, clock mishaps. In a season, by the way, where you have Chip Kelly as your offensive coordinator, Ryan Day, who's one of the best offensive minds in football, and, thanks to he almost cussed. Thanks to that cheating-ass program that you lost to for the 4th straight year, you are now allowed to have these little earpieces in your ear to communicate with your quarterback directly. There should not be issues with communication at all. And with Chip Kelly as your OC at home, and he said it was too loud. How does and by the way, Columbus, great environment. It's not even one of the top 5 loudest stadiums in college football. And you said it was too loud. It was that things were moving too fast. Things were chaotic. You didn't have much time to make it. What are you talking about, Ryan Day? This was the most untough football loss I've seen in the Ohio State Ryan Day era. It was absolutely pathetic and embarrassing. They deserved to lose. I'm pissed off because the thing is, at the end of the day, I know Ohio State's better than Michigan. And of all the losses that they have had against Michigan, this is the most embarrassing. I'm not saying it's okay to ever lose to Michigan, but you lost to national championship contending Michigan programs the last couple of years. Not this joke of a program that Sharon Moore and the skeleton of a roster that he had left after Harbaugh. You lost to that team. This is the worst loss of the Ryan Day era. It's the worst loss probably in the last 3 decades of the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry. I'm pissed off if you can't tell, Jake and Elliot and Casey. There was so much for me to be angry about at the end of that game, not just the result. It wasn't that you lost, it's how you lost. That's why people should be calling for Ryan Day's job. Not just that you lost to Michigan, it's the way you lost to Michigan. You let Sharon Moore out-coach you, out-physical you, out-tough you. I'm done. Take it from here. Absolutely embarrassing weekend for Ohio State, no doubt about it.
Yeah, it's the most embarrassing loss of my life. Any team by far, distantly the worst sporting event I've ever been to, ever. Not even close. Never in a million years did I think that they could lose that game. I thought the 20.5 might have been too high. I bet it because I'm an Ohio State fan. Thought it was going to be a closer game than Indiana. I even said that last week. Michigan had a lot of strengths that matched up with Ohio State's weaknesses, especially in the trenches on the offensive and defensive side of the football. I know Michigan's not a good team. I know they were without their 2 best players, Will Johnson, Colston Loveland. They have 5 draft picks on the defensive line. 5 players on the defensive line are going to get drafted in this draft. And Ohio State was without 3 offensive linemen. You still should win that game by 2 or 3 scores. I don't understand why Ryan Day was more enamored with proving that he's tough than winning a football game. because it seems like he cared more about changing the narrative than getting a win, and I don't know why he didn't think a win was enough to change the narrative. If you beat Michigan by running the ball for 20 yards and you throw for 405 touchdowns, you're a tough football team.
Yeah.
You won the game. That's all that matters. I just don't get it. I don't get how they had that game plan. And the worst part about it, yesterday, Wink Martindale, Michigan's defensive coordinator, was quoted as saying he was confused the whole game about why Ohio State wasn't attacking the outside. He said Michigan caught a massive break by Ohio State not throwing the football in the second half. You have the best receiver in the country, in my opinion, in Jeremiah Smith. You target him twice in the second half. Twice.
Yeah, I'm not an Ohio State guy, but I was watching it, and I was just very confused. Not to mention they had 3 offensive plays in the fourth quarter before it came down to the final attempt at a drive. So they had 6 plays, 2 3-and-outs in the fourth quarter. It just wasn't. I mean, it wasn't good enough. The execution wasn't there, and on top of it all, after the game, what happened? It seemed like Ryan Day was just out of it. Like he wasn't like there was players getting pepper sprayed and having fist fights, and Ryan Day's asking people what's going on, what's happening out there. Like at some point you have to be responsible for your program. You have to be responsible for what's going on, and he's nowhere to be found. He's just standing there watching. While one of the leaders of the team is taking down the flag of Michigan, saying this can't happen on our field. What's his name? Jack Sawyer?
Jack Sawyer.
Yeah.
He's more of a leader than Ryan Day is. I don't know. It was evident at least towards the end of that game, right after the fight, that this was going to be it for Ryan Day. He could win a championship, and I still think there's a chance he'd be gone. Still be a little bit of a chance. You can't lose to Michigan 4 times. It's unacceptable.
Jack Sawyer, born and raised in Columbus, went high school, 5-star recruit, committed to Ohio State, came back for his senior year, probably would have been a first or second round pick this year.
Yeah.
Came back for his senior year just to beat Michigan. And he makes a play in that game that will never be talked about again. And it should legitimately be the greatest play in Ohio State history.
Well, I don't know about that.
A hometown kid,
No, it would have been.
10-10 game, pickoff on the goal line. You drive down, you score a touchdown, you win that game. That is the greatest play in Ohio State history to end this 3-year losing streak.
Jake,
100%. And they
there was
stole
a play
that from
earlier.
him.
There was a play earlier in the game where he dropped back in coverage. And I'm like, why the hell is he dropping back in coverage? It ticked me off. And then not even the possession later, he gets that interception. And my buddy looked at me. He goes, that's why you drop him back in coverage. You're right. It was like the way look. That you're right. That play would have been etched in history. That would have been one that would be replayed over and over. Anytime a video montage or package would be put together of the rivalry, that play would be included in there. It would have been one of the biggest plays in the history, and it still technically is. But again, there's nothing to show for it. It's the 4th straight loss, and it's not on him. You held Michigan to 13 points, and technically, look, it wasn't a pick 6, but when you throw an interception in the red zone like that, or at least in their territory, as deep into their territory as you did, into your territory, I guess, like it's just one of those where it set them up for an easy
2-yard touchdown drive.
If
the Ohio
that
State
doesn't
defense
happen,
played lights out.
The quarterback threw for 60 yards.
That's what I'm saying.
And by the way, they played lights out. That's tough. That's tough football. But you had to win tough offensively. Like this was on Ryan Day and 1,000,000%. 1,000,000% at the end of the day. I see, people saying, well, Kenner, you said it didn't matter. It didn't matter. I never said that beating Michigan or losing to Michigan didn't matter. I just said that I think winning a national championship should be all that matters. Just like, hey, I want my team to win a Super Bowl, but I don't want them to lose to the Bengals and lose to the Steelers and lose to the Ravens. I want to kick those teams' ass too. I'm sick when they lose to those teams, but I still want my team to win the Super Bowl. It doesn't matter. That's not the argument going on right now, but I'm very angry about that and about that result and everything. And Ryan Day stood there just blank-faced, had no emotion, had no answer, had no response, because apparently he thought we were a tough football team, and they just weren't, or at least the coaches weren't. The coaches weren't. Now, you talked about the planting of the flag that led to that melee, or you talked about the melee that afterwards and how he responded to that. First of all, Michigan, no problem with what you did. Don't blame you one damn bit. You go in there and you win as almost a 20-point underdog. I have no problem with you wanting to go in there and plant the flag and do what you do and talk your blank. Do what you got to do. But I also have no problem with Sawyer and everybody else not wanting to let it happen. Because I'm here to tell you, for all the do-gooders online and on social media, Ohio State, just take your loss like a man and go into the locker room and blah, blah, blah. Stop it. Because you want to know what would have happened? Had they let him, and this happened when Baker Mayfield did it back in 2017, when Baker Mayfield in Oklahoma planted the flag in the middle of the block O in the center of the center field, everyone ripped. That was the only time I heard people question Urban Meyer's run where they talked about, oh, that wasn't tough. I can't believe you let Baker Mayfield in Oklahoma do that. Former Buckeyes would come out and say, that wouldn't have happened if I was there. And now I'm hearing some former Buckeyes and some players say, oh, that's messy. You got to, you can't do that. You can't have that brawl afterwards. Respect the rivalry. I said, no, that was actually the second defensively tough as hell all game. The second toughest thing they did in that game was not let that happen. I like that they did not let that happen. I appreciate Michigan, what they were trying to do. Don't blame them one bit. The rivalry, 4 straight years, 20-point underdog, and you go into Columbus and get a big win, go plant that flag. But also deal with the repercussions of that, and that's what happened. Kudos to Ohio State and those seniors and those players who it mattered to them. They weren't willing to let that happen. I don't know why we got to do the do-gooder approach and say, this is bad for football. It's bad for the Big Ten. It's bad for blah, blah, blah. Both schools got fined $100,000 each. I have no problem with either school's approach to what they did. I loved every bit of it. I just wish it was after an Ohio State win and not after Michigan extending their win streak to 4.
No, I couldn't agree more. If you win a rivalry game, go plant your flag. And if you have any respect about the stadium you play in, you don't let them do it. I mean, there should be a fight after every single rivalry game when that happens. And it seemed like this week it started to click for a lot of people, and there was. And it made me very, very happy because for too many years now, we've seen teams go into opposing stadiums, win, and plant the flag. I mean, J.J. McCarthy did it in 2022 in Columbus, and it made me sick. And thankfully, the players on this team have a little bit more pride and were willing to stop that. And the defense played incredibly well all game. And everyone's saying, oh, more fight after the game than during the game. They held Michigan to, 6 points offensively?
Yeah.
A 2-yard drive after an interception. That's enough to win a football game. And the 13 was enough to win a football game if Jaden Fielding remembered how to play football. But I like the fight afterwards.
Did you think the pepper spray was a little much?
Yeah.
I thought the pepper spray
Probably.
I thought the pepper spray
I thought it was funny that a lot of the cops were
much.
macing themselves because they would spray it at the players and the wind would just get back in their face. There was a couple cops crying on the ground. It was like, well, if you're going to mace, I would have just let them fight. I don't know why we keep breaking these up.
Well,
just let them go. They're wearing pads.
I think it should be the coach's responsibility to stop the fight.
But Ryan Day didn't know what was going on.
Well, that's true. And Ryan Day, what a letdown that is.
I do think there's a conversation that has to be had about what happens if you fire him. I think that's an important thing to discuss because I fall in the camp that you can't lose to Michigan 4 times. You have to fire him. But I think the other side, talking about what happened 5 because he didn't play in 2020. We haven't beat Michigan in 5 years. If you fire Ryan Day after this season, Jeremiah Smith gone, Cornell Tate gone, Brandon Ennis gone, Caleb Downs gone. This recruiting class gone, unless you get an Urban Meyer.
But I think there's a better than not chance you get something like an Urban Meyer. I don't think it won't be the wide receiver. It won't be Hartline. I just think it will. I think Ohio State's such a big name in sports. There will be a big name coach to go along with it, and I don't think you'll have to worry about it too much. We'll see what happens in the playoff. If he wins a championship, obviously it's more than not likely that he stays, but we'll see. We'll see what goes on. A first-round loss, he'll be gone the next day.
Is there a 0% chance that he leaves?
No, I'm here to tell you right now.
I think that's a very real possibility.
No, I think
if Ryan Day is not the head coach next season, to me, it is because he left. I don't think they're firing him. I don't think he's getting, unless they lose the first-round match. Like if the player, again, the caveat being if the players quit on him, okay? Like if they, we saw the Bear, Eberflus kept his job as long as he did, and I think Zach Taylor will keep his job as long as he can until you sense that the players have completely quit on him. You saw after the loss against the Lions on Thanksgiving, the players just straight up threw Eberflus under the bus, and that's why he didn't make it anymore. If players are straight up quitting and coaches are straight up quitting on Ryan Day, he will be gone. But if they go out there and continue to fight and they lose a second-round playoff game close, I think Ryan Day is back. I don't think that they're going to move on from Ryan Day from that perspective. But at the end of the day, Ryan Day, you saw the zombie look on his face after that loss. He is exhausted. He could just say, the F with this. I had a $20 million roster. I had some of the best receivers in football. I have 2 of the best running backs in football. I had all this NFL talent on defense, and I still can't win this game. People are putting out his address on social media like a bunch of savages. Like, this is insane. he could just say, I'm out. And I think that if Ryan Day is not the head coach next season, it has more to do with him leaving than him being let go. I don't think he's being fired.
There is one job that would make me think Ryan Day is going to leave Ohio State. I think if Lincoln Riley leaves USC. I think Ryan Day would go to USC if Lincoln Riley leaves, because I think that's where he belongs. Soft offense, quarterback. Don't play any games that matter, so you don't have to worry about losing them.
Damn.
I do think something that else. I know I kind of jumped around there going to the coaching conversation when we were talking about the fight.
Bearcats would take him.
That's probably not a bad spot.
A year or two ago, I would have traded you. Dave
Really?
for Fickle. Not anymore, but
I'll trade you.
hell, give us Satterfield.
You can have
Can't
Sat.
be worse.
Big Sat.
Yeah, no, we'll take Sat.
Big
I
Sat
did see the
dude.
Appalachian State fans want him back.
Really?
Yeah, bad.
Real?
Yeah.
How about that? Big Sat's going to be booed out of his last 2 programs.
Yeah, the other last thing I want to talk about with the post-game fight, right? Michigan plants the flag, Ohio State starts the fight, or Michigan starts the fight by planting the flag. Whichever way you want to place that credit, I think both would be fine for me. How many fights have happened in the Big Ten in the last, decade or so? A lot. A good number. How many of those fights have involved Michigan? All of them?
Has it been all
Every
of them?
single one?
Has it been all?
Michigan State in the tunnel. Michigan State on the field earlier this year. Michigan, Ohio State. Michigan, Minnesota in their field. Michigan, Iowa in the tunnel. Every single fight in the Big Ten involves Michigan. Maybe there's a problem with that organization.
The Big House also needs to actually, act like a real program and get a second tunnel. I don't know why. I mean, that's high schoolish. I mean, high schoolers don't run into the same tunnel to go to their locker room, but that doesn't help. But yeah, that's a good point, Jake. I'm not saying other fights haven't happened around.
Every fight in the Big Ten involves Michigan.
Yep, the Big Ten. You're right. I mean, but they're tough. They love to fight.
They are tough.
It's the tough. Yeah, there you go.
Man, Lou Holtz was so right about Ohio State.
Lou Holtz was right.
Unbelievably right.
But all right, let's step away for a few moments. We'll have a quick. The last segment of the show. Well, that'll be a touch and see you tomorrow. I mean, that's how quick this is going to be. We'll step away for a few moments. More off the bench next. All right, and we are back off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Willingham and Dayton. We'll get more of this tomorrow, but Jake, I at least appreciate the fact that you said you don't care about the playoffs, that you hope Ohio State opts out. That's the only answer from a guy that says the rivalry is bigger than absolutely everything else.
Yeah,
if you truly believe the rivalry is bigger than everything else, you're not allowed to cheer. I don't want to see anybody cheering on Ohio State in the playoffs that had that take of Michigan is bigger than winning a national championship. Everyone out there, and by the way, he doesn't get it. I see you. He doesn't get it. He doesn't get it.
I think the majority of the fan base doesn't care about the playoff.
No.
I think so. I do.
So no national championship, no one's tuning in if they get their semifinal.
I would watch. I would absolutely. I'm not saying I'm not going to watch Ohio State play. I'll watch every Ohio State game for the rest of my life. It doesn't change anything about this season. This season's still a massive failure, even if you lift up that trophy.
Oh no. Nope, we've been good. We even got through a Bengals conversation. No, I respect your opinion, Mr. Tissett. I respect it. We're not going to fight and brawl like after the Ohio State Michigan game. I respect your opinion. Everyone has opinions.
You can plant a pitchfork in here, a flag in here if Ohio State wins it. Then we can fight.
By the way, Mark Fetter's super chat. Time for Ryan Day to go. So. I think it's pretty unanimous, I would say, from Ohio State fans. How many people are defending? What's the percentage? 99-1?
No.
90-10.
That night it was about 99, maybe full 100 fire day. I think it's like 70-30 right now because people are starting to think about these recruits.
Jake, what do you say to those people that use, and we only have like a minute and a half left, Harbaugh lost 5 straight to Ohio State and was on the way out the door, okay? And then we all know what happens next. They cheat for 3 years, of course, but he gets that first win over Ohio State post Urban Meyer, of course, and then goes on to be a dominant team for 3 years and capping it off with the national championship. If Michigan would have followed this approach, they would never have got that Harbaugh national championship run, of course, if they would have just pulled the plug on it right away. My only pushback on that comparison, Jake, is the fact that Michigan lost those games because they were bad. The Michigan was not good during that run with Harbaugh early on. Like, they were good, they were okay, they were
top
still
10
losing.
team in 2 of those games.
They were, but
in
they
2
were
of those 5
losing
games. It was top 5 matchups.
But were they ever better than Ohio State? Did they?
No,
they never lost.
No, there was never like a talent gap in favor of Michigan.
Yeah.
No, you're definitely right.
That talent gap existed Saturday. That's
For
why
sure.
I think that's the worst loss for either team. We've seen Ohio State pummel Michigan by 30 or 40 points, but that's because those Michigan teams were bad. Like, this might be the worst loss that I could think of in this rivalry when you look at that, for how bad Michigan
I 100%
is,
agree.
how good Ohio State is. I mean, I see people saying, hey, be patient. Look, at Michigan was patient with Harbaugh, and look what happened there. I don't know if it's the same situation technically here with Ryan Day.
Yeah, no, I think that is another thing that's very interesting to talk about here, because if Michigan would have fired Harbaugh after 0-5, they're not national champions. So Ryan Day, again, 66-9. In a 12-team playoff, when is he ever missing it? When is he ever missing a 12-team playoff? So if more people in the Buckeyes brass agree with Kinner than agree with me, then you certainly don't fire Ryan Day, because he can win a championship every single year. It depends on what you value more, competing for a national championship or beating Michigan. Friendly reminder, Woody Hayes also went 0-3 in a stretch against Michigan. So a lot of coaches have had ruts in this rivalry. It's a hard-fought rivalry. Records never matter. 20-point favorite, you certainly wish it did matter, but obviously it didn't on Saturday, and Ohio State lost, and it's the worst loss in the history of the rivalry. It's not close. And with the money Ohio State put in, the expectations, the seniors coming back, not to win a championship, but to beat Michigan, and falling short, 0-5. And I'm an Alabama fan as well, and after that Iron Bowl ended, Alabama victory lap and everyone, it's been 5 years since Auburn's beat us. Ohio State is Auburn. Ohio State is the game like Auburn is in the Iron Bowl.
Yeah.
Ohio State's a joke, a laughing stock in college football, because you can't beat the one game that matters to you. And it's a shame, because I didn't think we'd ever reach this point as Buckeyes fans. Buckeye football's dead, and you got to rebuild it.
All right. Well, from the radio side, that wraps it up for us here today. We'll pick up with more of this tomorrow. There's still cookies in the studio?
There are.
I don't know how good they still are, but we'll give it a shot. That wraps it up for us until tomorrow. This has been Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Oh, we're back.
Are we back?
How are you?
Hey,
I guess.
I got a cherry on top to send Casey. I was watching the Sunday night game last night. By the way, McCaffrey, man, what a brutal year that is.
Yeah.
It's confirmed he tore his ACL, right?
I thought it was Achilles.
Achilles. I gotta go.
It's confirmed he's out for the year. I don't know that we know what it is.
I think Schefter said something. I could be wrong. Let me look it up.
I've got that tweet you sent.
So anyway, I was watching the game last night. It was a snow game. I love snow games, especially in Buffalo. This was, I believe, I have the whole tweet up. Zach and his father, Steve Pryor, drove up from Marietta, Ohio at 4:30 a.m. to shovel at Highmark. No tickets for the game, just a calling that, quote, we should be out there to help. Zach called it a wedding present for Josh Allen. That is what Bills fans will do to shovel the stadium. Could you imagine Bengals fans doing this for Mike Brown? Could you imagine it? Look at this. These two gentlemen drove up from Ohio to shovel their stadium. Absolutely insane that fans will do that for an owner. I don't know how much they're getting paid.
You don't think it's a bad look for like
$20 an hour. Yikes.
They're at least getting paid, but still,
awesome.
I don't think that's. If you're not getting tickets to the game,
dude, if we got that much snow, I'd go down to Paycorn a second.
No, you wouldn't.
Absolutely.
No, you.
That'd be a blast. Get all your friends, go down there in the stadium, get free food and drink.
No, what food?
No question.
What food are we getting?
Yeah, they said they feed them in hot drinks for $20 an hour to shovel snow. I think it's awesome. I think good fan bases would absolutely do this for their teams. I think it's awesome. I think it's one of the cooler things NFL teams do. I think it's a blast. Yeah. I would love to do the Cincinnati if we got enough snow.
No. Casey, would you do it? No way you'd do it.
No.
Timing's off.
Kenner, you wouldn't do it.
No, I don't think. I just think it's like the NFL just makes so much money. Like, you mean to tell me like there's not a better way to get your stadium cleared out?
Well, they could hire someone, but the fans want to do it.
Yeah, that's my issue. I just think the fans
Want to or have
crazy.
to.
No, I think they genuinely want to.
No,
they turn people away to do it.
Yeah,
you have to apply, and they tell people no because they fill out there's long lines of fans that want to do it.
If they didn't offer the money, they'd still do it, which I think is
They didn't
crazy.
offer the money years ago.
Yeah,
years ago they did it for free.
I think that's insane.
And they didn't have a sign-up list, and there were lines of cars outside Highmark Stadium. They had to turn people away, and they said it was unsafe. That's why they turned up the sign-up list, so they didn't have cars coming that couldn't come into the stadium. Like, I think every Bills fan wants to do it.
Then I changed my mind. Like, if fans want to do it, if they want to do it, I'm okay with that. Then it's just one of those where, hey, I bought a ticket to tonight's game. Well, you could come, but you have to dig your own seat out.
The best part is the seats are kind of still covered.
No, they're all covered.
They just shovel the field for the most part.
They do terrible work.
They're just mounded up in the seats.
So when I was at that Browns game, the Browns Steelers game on Thursday night for that snow game, it was wild. Like, between every commercial break, like literally you would have someone at each yard line that would go out with the shovel. Like, every time you come back from a commercial, like, you would have obviously every line that was shoveled out and every marker that was shoveled out too. I mean, I don't know how you sign up for that. I'd like to know who the people are that sign up to be the shovelers for these games. But yeah, I mean, out of nowhere, all of a sudden there was just over 20 people with shovels on the sideline. And every time you go to commercial break, they would sprint out there. I've never seen people move so fast. It's kind of like in college basketball, they always highlight the game manager out there wiping down the floor. It was that fast to get the markers cleared out and the field lines cleaned out. But that'd be a cool job too. I would do that one. That one I would do. I would do that one in a heartbeat. To be on the field, sideline, cool. Like no game, that'd be pretty neat. But nonetheless.
Any other fun things you saw this weekend in sports?
Yeah, there were two other things I wanted to bring up. I was going to do it during headlines, but we didn't really do an NFL score thing. Trevor Lawrence died.
So I saw Rex Ryan this morning. His take is they need to stop teaching the slide and teaching the dive into their ankles.
Okay, the problem with that is that's not giving yourself up. So they'd have to change NFL rules because if you dive forward, you're allowed to get hit.
Yeah.
People saying that Trevor slid late, I disagree. I think that's one of the dirtiest hits I've ever seen.
It's pretty bad.
That was disgusting.
He came out apologizing.
He put out a great Azeez Al-Shaair, one of my favorite players in the entire league, off-ball linebacker. He was the third linebacker in the Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw room for a while, and he bounced around the league, now back with D'Amico Ryans in Houston. And he's playing at an incredibly high level in the middle of that defense. And he's not a dirty player. That's what he said after the game. And you never want to see that happen. But, man, I mean, I expect he's going to have a big-time fine. They said they're not anticipating a suspension, which does shock me quite a bit. But, it looks like he'll be in there for the long haul. But Trevor probably shut down for the season with the way their record looks. You're thinking that concussion, your IR, 4 weeks. At that point, why not just play Mac the rest of the year, right?
Yeah, I would absolutely. And Mac played fine.
Yeah.
You gave him a chance to win the game.
Big weekend for Bama quarterbacks in the NFL.
Yeah, it was. But actually, real quick, speaking of I'll go to Ohio State quarterback.
Okay.
Justin Fields came in yesterday for the final play of the game. Did no coach said, hey, maybe we should watch for a little quarterback keeper?
Oh, you want to know how much of a hellscape my weekend was?
Yeah.
That happened Saturday, too. Michigan brings in Alex Orji for Davis Warren,
right.
25-yard read option. Everyone in the stadium knew he was running the ball except for Jim Knowles in the defense.
Yeah.
Then it happens again to ice the game on Sunday and end the Bengals season. I mean, what a terrible week.
I think legitimately the fact that they were unable to stop that play, it says everything about how poor of a staff we have here. Truly how poor.
The last thing I wanted to bring up, most losses as a starting QB through 4 years in the NFL, David Carr. Through 5 years, David Carr. Through 6 years, David Carr. Through 7 years, Derek Carr. 8 years, Derek Carr. 9 years, Derek Carr. 10 years, Derek Carr. Most losses as a QB through 11 years, Derek Carr. So shout out the Carr family for taking up the most losses by an NFL QB 4 years in, all the way through 11 years in.
That's our guy. By the way,
that's crazy.
That's insane. That's insane. Almost as insane as it looks like Kinner is completely frozen.
Oh, that's good. That's good. If Derek Carr loses 4 more games by next year, he'll pass Archie Manning.
Poor guy.
For 12 years.
Poor guy.
That's going to do it for Off the Bench.
I mean, did he leave? Did he just leave?
Not a clue.
Where is he?
I don't know.
Well, that's going to do it for Off the Bench today, I guess.
That's it, I guess. I don't, where the hell's our
Box
our
lunch?
Oh, there he is.
Oh, there he is. He's
there
back.
He is.
He's back.
There he is.
Fumble.
Ball. That's all we got, Kenner.
Yeah, my bad. We have a show. A Buyer show comes on at noon, so he popped in. So I just jumped on this real quick and popped out. But we got the radio one in. So,
there we go. Did you get the recording for the radio?
Yes. Tell Casey we're good to go.
Casey, he wanted me to tell you we're good to go.
Casey, if you couldn't hear him.
Hi, Casey.
All right.
I'm mad at Casey, so I'm not talking to him right now. So I'll just tell you guys what to tell him. So
there you go. Another update. Last update. Travis Hunter minus 10,000 to win the Heisman.
Yeah, he had a pretty good game.
This is a farce.
Had a pretty good
absolute joke.
We never got to talk about the Thanksgiving games. Actually, I'll say one quick thing. I might have to save it for box lunch, but one quick thing: the way the Bears ended that game, if Zach Taylor did that, I would drive to the stadium and I would sit until he was fired.
Is that the worst loss ever?
Yeah.
For like a fan base.
33 seconds in opponent field goal range. No, have a timeout. Don't use it.
Did you hear Caleb's explanation for why he didn't call a timeout? Because they asked him why he didn't call one.
He said it's not my job as a rookie, essentially.
He said correct, but he said the first point that he could call a timeout was with 18 seconds left in the game because that's when he got the play call.
Yeah.
Play call waited 20 seconds on the play clock to come in. Then he said he realized he didn't have enough time, changed the play at the line, and threw it.
What a joke. What an absolute disgrace. But he's fired, so they did the right thing.
That's right. Who are they going to hire, man?
I don't know.
How desirable is that job?
I don't know.
Because I really don't either. I guess it's just what do you believe of Caleb is how desirable that job is, right?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. It's
Jacksonville or Chicago? Which one's more interesting?
Chicago.
I think distantly Chicago.
Not even close. Jacksonville's a train wreck disaster, and they don't have a quarterback.
Yeah, I take Chicago.
Yeah, they have a top because Jacksonville? Who's picking number one today?
As of right now, it is Jacksonville, and I think they're going to make one of the worst picks we've ever seen in the NFL draft.
What do you think it's going to be?
Travis Hunter.
And you don't want that, obviously.
So if you're picking number one in the draft, you're going to take the second best corner or the fifth best wide receiver and only play him one way? Why wouldn't you take the best wide receiver if you're going to play him at wide receiver, or the best corner if you're going to play him at corner, or trade out and let someone else be stupid?
I agree with Jacob. If you're not going to draft him to be the two-way guy, which I don't think you can.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
It's so valuable.
If he is going to play both ways, different conversation.
Yep.
I don't see that happening, at least on an every snap basis.
Yeah.
Offensive packages as a number one corner. Maybe we get crazy and he's the number one wide receiver on a team and he comes in for dime or something.
Yeah.
But there's no way he's your corner one and your wide receiver one. And that's what taking him at one tells me you're going to do, which I don't think happens by the time you get through training camp and realize you can't do that in the NFL.
Yeah.
So I think it's a terrible pick.
And you risk creating drama because Travis Hunter's already come out on multiple interviews. He's done multiple interviews that said he will play both sides. Like he will be a receiver and a defensive back in the NFL. So, obviously those conversations will happen as you get closer to the draft and during that stuff. But you risk leading to confrontation, or you risk leading to drama if your mindset is you're going to be our receiver and we'll have select times that we throw you in at cornerback or vice versa. You risk that being a problem off the bat. But I would assume conversations would be had early. But if I'm Jacksonville, trade out of that. A team that really wants Shador, let them trade up to get him. Dangle that out there, see what you have. See if people want Trevor, trade Trevor Lawrence. Someone want Trevor Lawrence, come and take him. So we'll pick Shador. Something. They have options. It'll just, you're right, though. That seems like a forced pick if you do take him at number one.
The other side of that is you can't be the GM that doesn't take Travis Hunter one if he does work both ways. So you're also in a crappy spot in that sense where you're picking number one in the draft for a reason. You've done something wrong. Your seat's probably at the very least a little warm. If you whiff on someone not named Travis Hunter at one and he's great somewhere else, you lose your job like that and you have no chance to get one anywhere else.
Oh, it'd be so bad. Well, by the way, real quick, Bengals, what's the final draft position? Because they have four tiebreakers over the four worst teams in the NFL.
Yeah.
But I think you can somehow sneak in there. The Jaguars are, and the Jaguars maybe, but you can lose to the Titans. If you lose to the Titans,
you lose to the Titans, you lose to the Browns. You're in a beautiful spot.
You're in a great spot. Yeah, I think we're looking at maybe a top 7 pick if we lose out.
I'm thinking we can pick top 10.
Top 10, okay.
Oh, if we lose out, we're picking top 5.
Top 5 if we lose out. All right. That's what I'm cheering for. We're cheering for tanks. Welcome to the Tankathon. We've made it.
We're here already.
We're here, baby.
I got to pull it up.
He's got his.
Been on it all day. Tankathon, baby.
He's got his draft.
I'll throw up if we take Ashton G&T at 10, like it says right now.
Ooh, that sounds fun. That's a fun pick. All right, that's it. Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. God bless America. God bless Justin Kinner, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Box lunch.